Happy Tuesday to you right here at 710 KNUS. My name is George. This is The George Show. Weather today, it's going to be as good as it's going to be for the foreseeable future, according to Billy's printed and full color pictogram. 43 degrees is the high. Tomorrow we drop down a little bit, but then Thursday, light snow and colder. Friday, 30. Saturday and Sunday, yikes, 18, 16 degrees. I should tell you that I've seen some things that say that 49 different states are under weather advisories at the moment. There's a period of time from like the 13th to the 20th, maybe it's the 18th of June, that our friend Chris Bianchi, is it Bianchi or Bianchi? Bianchi from 9 News says, listen, I can't tell you exactly what or when, which I wish they would do that more often, but it's going to be brutal. And none of the apps on your phone model the information as well as your local meteorologist does. Whether that's true or not, who knows? But it sounds like they're aggregators for information, and these guys go out there and fight. He said it's going to be brutal, the 13th to, I think, the 18th. It could have been the 20th. So that's coming up, folks. That is wicked soon. Let me see here. It is January the 9th. That gives us 4 days to buy a coat or a hat or something like that. Having said that, yesterday, the show got taken over by the announcement in the middle of the interview with KBB about Dave Williams running for Colorado Republican nominee for CD5 while maintaining his position as the chairman of the GOP. That story's continuing to get around there. There are discussions of people who may also get in this race. I should tell you, I received a text from a guy named Wayne Williams who said, hey, somebody told me, and that hurts too, because I'd rather Wayne just hear it because he listens to the show. But he said, somebody told me you said I'm a candidate. I'm still in the exploratory stages. So I want to make sure that we're clear on that, because I don't want to make someone a candidate before they're going to be one. The other one, another person I'd reached out to was Rose Puglisi. And Rose has indicated to me yesterday, it's just not the right time. She thinks she needs to continue to fight in the state house. And with only 19 Republican members out of 65, I get it. They can't really afford to have too many people defect to another office. Here are some other people on a website I saw as potential candidates. Jeff Crank, who I mentioned, he's a friend, former radio guy too. He used to work, I think, for Lamborn. I think he was his chief of staff at one point. Bob Gardner, veteran, JAG guy, love Bob. Eli Bremer, former Olympian and former U.S. Senate candidate. Eli has been super active. I think he was the chair of the El Paso County Party. State Senate Minority Leader Paul Lundeen. Paul is, if you're looking for someone who just knows stuff about being conservative and then sticks to his principles, that's Paul Lundeen. Fantastic guy. We've had him on the show. Really smart, appreciates the history and how it feeds into what conservative means here in Colorado. Stan Vanderwerf. Now, Stan's El Paso County Commissioner, and I feel like I just ran into Stan. I was giving a keynote speech at the 30th anniversary of the Pikes Peak Firearms Coalition, along with Michael Allen, the DA down in the mighty 4th. And I swear Stan had said he was running for state Senate, maybe Bob Gardner's seat. I think he's termed out something like that. But listen, there's so many people, and these are all legit qualified candidates, right? Like, this isn't your typical wing nuttery where someone decides, I've always wanted to be in Congress, now's my chance. This isn't that. These are all folks who have been accomplished in public service and all pretty conservative guys. And then there's a couple not running for sure. Dennis Heisey, Don Wilson, all good dudes as well. People that didn't respond, Vicky Tompkins, Kerry Geithner, Tim Geithner, Nordberg. Dan's a great dude, former state rep, good dude. Daryl Glenn, who we know used to be our U.S. Senate nominee back in, 2018 maybe? Was it 2018? And then Rose Puglisi, John Suthers. I can't imagine John wanting to do it. I think that Suthers, after he hung up that second term at mayor, I think he's like, I think I've given enough at the office. And so anyway, we'll keep you tuned in on that. The Lauren Boebert issue that developed over the weekend with the potential allegations of potential domestic violence. Don't know where that is. Haven't seen any real updates. Couple other things. A federal district court judge threw out the case that Tina Peters filed to derail her prosecution. That thing is moving forward, and I think it's set for trial next month. I think February is when she's going to trial. I'll try to nail that down as well. And then last night, nothing really exciting happened unless you watched college football. That was about it, because I just didn't detect anything. I saw something that said that the Golden Globes had an explosion of 50% increase in their audience. I wasn't part of it. I have no idea what the hell that was. Billy, did you watch the national championship?
I watched bits and pieces of it. Not 100%. When Michigan went up by, I think it was 2 touchdowns, that's when I tapped out. So it was about 9 o'clock ish. It was entertaining. It was okay. It's at times reminds me, again, I'm not a huge college football fan. I enjoy it, but I don't go out of my way to watch it. And it reminds me a little bit as to why, only because I watch the NFL. It's just the lack of precision, and that's okay. It's for me, the difference of watching the MLS and the Premier League or the Bundesliga or Serie A. It's just different skill level, and they perform differently. I do like the passion and the fact that these kids are playing for possibly, either a chance to get to the NFL or a lot of them just for, just the idea that, hey, I am doing this for my school. I like that. I mean, granted, a lot of them getting paid to be there, but that's okay too. That's a wonderful transaction and a great thing for them.
A lot of dreams ended too on that field.
Oh yeah, a lot did.
There are folks that they focus on for the loss, like the quarterback for the Washington Huskies, whose name escapes me, but also a great quarterback. That dude's going to play on again. I mean, he's going to get picked up in the draft somewhere. But for a lot of those guys, especially seniors on one of that's it, right? Like they're going to take off their helmet. And I remember that moment way before that in high school football. I remember the last home game that we played out there at the mighty Bear Creek. And at halftime, Coach Kintz, who was our football coach, came in and said, hey, for almost everybody in this room, this is it. This will be your last half of football ever. And you won't put on a helmet again. You won't put on the pads again.
Wow.
And, when you're 18, words like that don't have the same impact they do for us now in our late 30s. But at the time, even then, I remember standing there thinking, what? I mean, I guess that's right. Wow. And I never did. I never played football again. I mean, flag football or something.
See, it was early 20s when I stopped playing soccer, and it was because it had been a 12-month grind for so long that I kind of needed a break, and I never went back, and I miss it. I really wish I would have squeezed out a few more years. However, the one is there are some major injuries having to do with knees that I did avoid. So that's okay. So I'm okay. So there's a balance.
No surgeries.
Yeah, there's a balance. Oh, no, I've had surgeries. Yeah. No. I have broken numerous things. I get it. Yeah, I've broken numerous things. I have a very weird, unique injury that it was one of the things that when the doctor looked at it and got the x-rays back, he went, hey, come look what this guy did. And brought other people into the room.
Was it testicular?
No, it was, I have dislocated my collarbone. My collarbone is ripped off of my sternum on the right-hand side. Yeah, because normally it connects to your sternum. I ripped mine off. And he was surprised that the collarbone didn't break, but it floats. My right collarbone floats and is at a different angle.
Have they reattached it, staples or something?
No, they talked about it. If it became an issue, they'd have to bolt it down onto my rib cage.
Let's do it.
But I was like, it never became an issue. And so sometimes
does it allow
weird.
You to like slip out of a straitjacket?
No, and nothing like that. The weird thing is every once in a while, if I'm not paying attention, the top of the collarbone will rub across the top of my rib cage. And so it goes top, pop, pop, pop. And so I can feel it as it goes through. There's some weird things. Not really. No, I mean a little bit.
Is it like a party trick? Like you're like, hey, everybody, put your head on Billy's chest and listen to this.
No, the one that's weird is I've also broken my right shoulder. And that actually kind of a mess because I did something wrong to it a couple of days ago. And it's a problem right now, but that thing slips in and out of joint is the real issue. It's because I broke off part of the
Mel Gibson bone from Lethal Weapon.
Yeah, it is. So I have a number of injuries. I've had lower back surgery because of my time playing.
My goodness,
I have damage to the meniscus in both knees. The meniscus in my left knee is almost gone. Cartilage is shot, and I have ligament damage in both my ankles. So
worth it though.
Oh, yeah.
Totally worth it.
In a second, it was worth
this
it.
Is taking on aspects of that scene in Jaws right before Jaws attacks the boat for the final time, where they're all sitting around the table and they're comparing scars.
Oh yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah. And he's like,
Yeah.
that's the USS Indianapolis. You
And
know?
I'll tell you, and if we do compare scars, I've got one that looks really cool, and it's my right shoulder.
Is it a snake-shaped scar?
No, it's my right shoulder scar where I broke it, and it's because they thought it was going to be arthroscopic, and it wasn't, because the piece of bone was much larger that broke off my humerus bone than they thought. So they had to go in. It was supposed to be a 35-minute surgery that turned into 4.5 hours, because they had to go in and pull muscles apart and do some other stuff into my shoulder. The best part about it is it looks like it was in some sort of like really bad bar fight or gang fight. It looks like,
sweet.
Yeah, it looks like somebody tried to cut off my right arm. Because
that's awesome.
Yeah,
what a great story.
It runs all the way from the top right underneath to where my, the armpit is. So it does look
so you're
like
trying
someone
to hang out shirtless as much as possible.
Oh,
so
yeah.
people go, oh, look at that guy. Look at
what
that.
is that? Yeah. And it is.
Navy SEAL.
Yeah, it's an impressive scar. Yeah, the rest,
That's
the other ones
impressive.
are not impressive. Yeah, not at all.
I don't have anything impressive like that. I've got
Yeah.
the one scar from the ruptured Achilles that I got playing football at Mile High.
Nice.
Oh yeah. Yeah. If you say it just like that, people, scan you quickly like,
Yeah.
what?
You were
It was a fundraiser.
Yeah.
And it was a flag football game. And
That's fantastic.
And the two quarterbacks of the opposing teams, my quarterback was a guy named Ryan Clements, and Mullen guy. And then the other dude was a guy named Josh Penry on the other team. And anyway, it was an embarrassing moment to feel that pop, hear that sound, and then watch your foot dangle like this.
Yeah.
Just nothingness hanging at the end of your leg.
That's why I'm happy that I at least hung up the cleats early, because I have a number of friends that have that experience. I was actually playing in Salt Lake City. Yeah, it was Salt Lake City indoor tournament. Buddy of mine, really, really good player, down in the corner. Oh, and this is cool. At the time, it was. We were playing the New York Cosmos. That was kind of cool.
That is pretty
cool.
It
was kind of cool. Granted, it's not the real, it's still the club, but yeah, but that was kind of cool. He's down in the corner, and it's indoor, so it's an old, at the time, it's basically an old ice rink. So he's in the corner, and he goes to turn, and we're playing on, and remember this, it is like the old Veterans Stadium in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
It is basically just a layer of AstroTurf over the top of concrete. There's nothing else there.
That's the old Stutler Bowl by Cherry Creek.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he's down in the corner, and he goes to cut back and turn, and you hear a pop.
Oh, really? You heard it?
And there went his knee.
Oh,
and
geez.
You heard it.
Oh.
And he screamed and went down, and you were like, that's it. He's done.
That's
and
awful,
so
man.
Luckily,
never
I didn't
recovered.
have it. Nope, never did. And I feel bad for it, but part of it being because, again, we were playing on turf. And anybody that plays on grass versus turf knows that turf grabs you differently. And there are different types of torsion injuries that you get because of how turf hangs onto your feet.
You mess with nature. I'm telling you, that's the bad thing right there. That, of course, description reminds me of Booby Miles from the movie Friday Night Lights. I don't know if you remember that movie.
That's good.
Another great reference. Just to recap here on the Michigan game, only because I expect at any moment the ether will have worn off and Dr. Julia will be calling in.
Exactly.
Yeah. I watched. I thought it was going to be closer. It clearly, Washington their offense did not show up and expect the response from the Michigan defense that they got, and they never really adjusted. When it was 10-17, I thought, okay, we're one punch away, right?
Yeah.
And then they could never get going. When you start the second half with an interception, it's really hard to dig out, you know? And meanwhile, what's his name? Corum for Michigan, those two broken off runs. I mean, when you bust them for 30 plus twice, that's a morale killer. And they just could never get back. But I'm happy enough for Michigan, other than the fact that they're cheaters.
I know. That's the fun thing is the season in which they are caught for cheating. They win, and you're like, wait a minute.
Are they going to get an asterisk?
Yeah, I know. I'm curious about one. And I like the idea that you brought up the interception after the end of the halftime.
Oh,
because that is a momentum killer. Because you're coming out of that locker room thinking, we got a shot. We're going to do something here. We can get momentum, even if it's 3, that's fine, or we can get them further back in the field, etc. And you give the ball back immediately.
Give it back right away.
That was tough. The other one was,
it allows them to have that 2-score spread. They got up another field goal, and anyway.
Yeah, and you could tell. I guess personally, I don't know if you could tell. My impression was that the stage and the spotlights got to the Washington quarterback more than it got to the Michigan. Yeah, because his throws were drifting, And again, I don't watch a lot of college football, but I did watch the highlights before the game.
But you're right.
Yeah.
He was not precise.
No, he wasn't. And there were certain times in which I understand how difficult that is if you're a Washington fan, and even worse if you're a player, because there are specific plays that if the ball is 2 feet one direction, another direction, you've got 30 yards, you've got 40 yards, you've got a first down when you needed a first down.
Touchdown in one case, for sure.
Yeah, rather than kicking the going and punting. There were things that kind of changed, and I was surprised that Washington was unable to figure out what some of the Michigan defense was doing, because they were only giving them some of those underneath balls, and I didn't see them really come back in the second half and find a way to get some of those larger chunk plays that they needed.
Oh yeah,
and
they couldn't
wanted
get anything long for sure. And you know what's going to get you? It's always those underneath balls.
Yes.
That's always going to sneak up on you.
And then the reason I was watching that is because my son and I watched Liverpool Arsenal in the FA Cup over the weekend. And I'm not going to go on very long about this. It'll be less than 30 seconds. It was a in-game coaching masterclass yet again by Jurgen Klopp, who may be the best in-game manager in soccer right now.
Fake name.
He may be the best in-game manager on the planet right now in terms of soccer. He is having some problems with getting his team some joy playing Arsenal. They can't get out of their own side. They can't get into the Arsenal part of the field. They're having a really hard time with it based on Arsenal's defense. He didn't make a substitution. He moved a couple of players around, and everything changed.
Wow.
Because of where he put the players. He said, okay, Arsenal is allowing us to do this. Alrighty, then I'm going to put my and what it was is Arsenal was giving Liverpool an out as far as where you can get the ball, and it was the lower left-hand side of the defense, and they were only giving them the long ball over the top down the sides. And so what Jurgen Klopp did is said, okay, fine, I'm going to put my two fastest guys on the wings, and we're going to run at you. And then Arsenal went, and they peed themselves a little bit, and they lost 2-0. And that was it. It was in-game management that changed, and he didn't make any personnel changes. It was a tactical change based on how he moved the players around and said, okay, now we're going to attack them this way. And so what made Arsenal so dangerous in the first 35 minutes made them super vulnerable for the rest of the game. It was fascinating. And I appreciate this because Jurgen Klopp, we were one man up on Liverpool earlier in the season. He changed the tactics, and he screwed us, and we lost. Dude's brilliant. Dude is brilliant.
What's his name? Klopp?
Jurgen Klopp. CLOPP.
Isn't that the name of a character that Eddie Murphy played? Klopp?
Maybe. I don't know.
Was it Klopp? I can't remember.
Yeah.
I listen.
And I didn't see that in Washington. I didn't see them make that in-game change.
It could be the brothers, by the way. The coach for Michigan as well as the coach for the Ravens could each be celebrating their own big wins, because the Ravens look largely unbeatable. I know they've lost a couple games, but Harbaugh's are having a good year despite the fact that one of them is a known cheater. I went to the travel.state.gov website.
Why did you do that?
Well, because I've got this pending travel to Israel on the 20th. And by pending, I mean I don't think there's any chance it's going to happen. It actually gives you some advice. Here's some really, really very, very insightful advice. Do not travel to Gaza. There's no joke. That is on there.
Thanks.
Do not travel to Gaza. And it gives you a reason. Terrorism and armed conflict. Well, thank you.
That's the same reason that they put on the Tide Pods. Do not eat. It is the exact same reason.
Another one, reconsider travel to Israel due to terrorism and civil unrest. Reconsider travel to West Bank due to terrorism.
There we go.
And civil unrest. I love these nice. Tips are gold. If you decide to travel to Israel, here's one. Avoid demonstrations and crowds.
You think?
Who is going there other than idiots like me? Who is going there? Prepare a contingency plan. I've gone to the embassy thing for alerts. It's this never-ending stream of alerts that are going on. The embassy's at full staff and all that, but I don't know. I want to go, and yet everybody in my world that I've said, hey, I think I'm going to go do this, look at me with incredulity, like, what's wrong with you? Why would you do that? I mean, it's like being a storm chaser. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Like,
yes.
hey, look, a twister. Let's drive
look,
to it.
Yeah, let's
you
go
know?
towards that. Yeah.
Oh, is there war over there? Let's
Yeah.
just go check it out.
Why not?
Oh, are you going with the military? No,
No,
just touristy
No.
stuff.
Yeah, I'm
you
not,
know.
I'm not going to the people who can give me a safe, nor will give me weapons.
No, no body armor, nothing like
No.
that. Probably going to go in on a United.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes, yeah.
as long as the door doesn't
Yep.
come off. Did
Yeah.
you see that part of the story, by the way?
Yeah, exactly.
They're like, all right, let's just check the doors. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's not. Oh, these are all loose.
Oh, these
You
are
know,
loose. Yeah.
These bolts are loose.
Which again shows you that the amount of, when you start scaling back the number of people that you employ because you need to make certain revenue goals, and you start, knocking down the people that do the quality control, what do we think is going to happen? It's just like the, when you go to the grocery store now and they're making you check out your own stuff. And then sometimes you get the guy there and they're asking you, well, sir, can I see the receipt? Because I want to make sure you checked all the right stuff. Nope. No, you do not get to see my receipt because guess what? You asked me to be my own checker. I got no training. You now do not get to grade my performance. If you're allowing me to do this, no grading my performance. No.
Yeah.
You've trusted me already to do this. You don't get to see my receipt. Sorry, I'm going. Bye-bye.
As long as we're on the self-checkout
Yeah.
thing, I am rocking both the Costco and Sam's Club memberships for reasons I still can't justify if I say it out loud, but I'm glad I have them.
Oh, heck yeah.
If you've been to Sam's, though, there's genius there. They have a thing on your phone with the app where you can self-check out. Like as you go, you're clicking and all that stuff. It's the bomb. I mean, it's the bomb. Costco, on the other hand, you're in a line behind people who you're analyzing their carts because you're like, why would you need 30 pounds of that? Or whatever. Or was this Fashion Friday at Costco? And by the way, I own a lot of Costco clothes.
Oh, it's great.
In no way am I judging you. But that feature right there is huge. But they also check you at that door with that sort of randomized, they click 3 different things, just trying to see.
Yeah, is it there? And I'm curious to see what that does for Sam's Club, because Costco has said, how everybody else is saying they have all this great shoplifting and everything else. Costco has kept their losses to 1% or less.
Have they really?
Yeah, there's nobody shoplifting nothing at a Costco. Also, did you see what the CEO of Costco said recently when one of their stores,
the Civil War?
No, one of their stores voted to unionize?
No,
it was really interesting.
Oh.
I would not have guessed this. This shocked me.
Yeah.
The CEO of Costco, when one of their shops voted to unionize, said, "I'm sorry, that's our fault. That you guys wanted to union organize because you felt you weren't getting the attention you deserved. You weren't getting the responses you deserved. You felt that your direct supervisors in the chain of command weren't responsive to your needs. You felt like your work conditions weren't up to standards. That's on us. Let's sit down and let's talk about what we can do."
And you're all fired.
Yeah. But again, what I was shocked with is he didn't go after the idea of you union men. He didn't do that. He sat there and said, "Oh, you organized because we messed up, because we aren't fulfilling our promise for this work environment." That is 180 degrees.
That's pretty
away
good.
from
I
everybody
thought you
else.
were going to say he just closed up shop.
Yeah,
They're like, we're closing this Costco. Peace out, dudes.
Which is different than the Lululemon CEO. You see him?
No.
Oh yeah. He basically said,
hold on. What did you call it?
Oh, well, Lululemon. It's Lululemon, but I thought Lululemon. Yeah. I mess that up all the time because I think Lululemon's a dumb
That
name.
is so adorable.
I think it's stupid. But speaking of stupid, dude comes out and says that he's not happy with some of the diversity and inclusion products that his stores are selling. He says some of you should not buy our stuff.
He said that?
Yeah. I went, wow. Okay.
Well, they know their market, I guess.
Yeah. Or do they know that it should be smaller?
I don't. Yeah.
That's the interesting part about it, is the idea that he's like, no, we do not want to sell to everybody. Fair enough. Fair point. But wow. Okay, then. Yeah. Let's see. And does he also know that he's charging like 5 times the amount of the
it's a lot. Listen, I've been in that place for a couple different reasons, and
you were lost.
It's not that the clothes are cheap or anything, but and I don't mean inexpensive. I mean, they're not cheaply made, but holy smokes, man, the price on that stuff. Like
it's dumb.
I got Amanda a couple years ago one of those crossbody bags, as you know, Lewis would call it a European carry-all, but and I was like, what is in it? Does it come with its own money? Is that why it costs this amount? But it doesn't. Hey, somebody texted in and said, George, you keep saying, and by the way, thank you for correcting me, listeners. You keep saying it was a door that blew off the plane. It wasn't. It was just some random section of the middle of the fuselage. If that's
That's
true,
even worse.
yeah, that's worse because now you can't
Yeah.
say I don't want to sit in the exit row.
Yeah, now it's just no exit, please.
I didn't realize those panels could just pop off. I just figured once they got spot welded
No.
on there, they were good to go.
I assume that's part of the quality control we're not doing anymore.
I
Just guessing.
I'm-
Just guessing.
I'd be happy to pay a couple more bucks for someone to be the body of the plane guy.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Just, run around there with that ratchet.
Yeah, and in fact, they should ask you, would you pay an extra $5 per ticket, which ought to be
Yeah.
all it takes to ensure that the plane remains intact during flight?
Yes, exactly.
The answer is yes.
Yes,
I would
yes,
click
I would
that
like
box.
to do that. Yes.
I want to meet the people who don't, and I don't want to be on their plane.
Not
There
at
should
all.
be a special plane for people that are like, no, I don't
Yes.
want to pay for that.
Yes, and they don't get parachutes.
Yeah. In fact, that ought to be it. You have a difference. It's not just where you sit like economy plus.
Yeah, no.
It's your plane. Like your plane's been inspected 10 times. You're going to pay more. Or
Yes.
your plane was inspected in the 20s. You know what I mean? Like in the
Exactly.
2020s. Different.
Well, who was the comedian that talked about the idea that he was certain that if there was a problem on the plane, that the first class passengers, that part of the plane, would just detach and become its own mini plane, while the rest of the plane
That
would
was Dennis Miller talking
was it him?
about
Okay, that was
talking
it.
about first
Yeah.
class breaking off into the
Yep,
Goldfinger
exactly.
mini jet,
Yep,
and the rest of us are
exactly.
charcoal
Yeah.
briquettes on
That's
the ground.
exactly it.
Yeah, that was exactly it right there. Listen, we are going to have a guest here at 7:00. Her
Ooh.
name is Sherry Pife, as you
yes,
know.
yes.
Sherry, fantastic guest because she is that kind of reporter that we don't have as much of anymore. She's the reporter that gets all the local stuff done when the other big guys just aren't getting it done at all because they just I don't blame them because they just don't have the resources or the attention. They're just going after the big shiny objects. And it's folks like Sherry Pife, Dave Migoya that are out there tilling the soil for the other stories that end up becoming the big deal that then the big legacy media folks jump all over. We're going to have her at 7. But here's what we're going to do. This is crazy, folks. It's only 6:30. We've only blown past the predicted and predictable break by 5 minutes, at maybe 10 minutes at this point. We're going to give Billy plenty of time to do the Thorpe report, and then we're going to jump back in with an edition of You Choose the News. Folks, I don't know if you know this. These segments have become so popular that one of them has its own honest-to-God, legitimate endorser, sponsor.
It's got to be a mistake.
I don't know how you did it, Billy, but congratulations.
I have no idea what happened here. I question, but I appreciate it. I appreciate layer fireplace and furniture. That's fantastic.
Listen.
Again, no idea.
We've been hoping for things like this for now 2 years. It's finally happening. Let's enjoy it all together after a very quick break. This is the George Brauchler Show, the George Show. George, 710 KNUS. Reaching its ascendancy in greatness, it is the Thorpe Report with BTs.
Hey, good morning, sir. And yes, the Thorpe Report is sponsored to by Lair Fireplace and Patio.
Awesome.
Yep, go and shop, and they've got great selections, and yeah, they're good people. So yeah, and they're giving us money. So
amazing.
I know, amazing.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so thank you. We've got a few inches of snow that could fall over the northern mountains late this afternoon. Gusty winds will continue tonight into tomorrow. Denver's got a chance of snow off and on throughout Wednesday and into the weekend. And then temperatures going to dive down into the teens and dropping below zero at times as well. Today, highs of 43, low of 22, partly breezy. Tomorrow, we got a high around 40, but then the slight chance of snow overnight that's going to drop us down to about 25 on Thursday and 36 on Friday. Yeah. Police in Denver announced an arrest in connection with a man's murder whose body was found days after he was stabbed to death. Anissa Johnson, 24, was arrested Friday on charges of first-degree murder, accused of stabbing to death 64-year-old man whose body was found in his apartment located in the 1200 block of North Washington Street.
Why?
Yep. A man arrested on suspicion of burglary at a Wheat Ridge jewelry and antique shop a month after the owner was shot and killed could be connected to the homicide. Peter Agrello was fatally shot during a robbery on November 29th. The shooter left the scene. Stolen red Chevrolet Silverado connected to the suspects was found burned and heavily damaged 2 days later in Centennial. No one has been charged in the shooting, but during the investigation into the murder, 3 flex cuffs were found on the floor in front of a safe from which silver coins had been removed. Surveillance video showed a man try to use the cuffs on the deceased man and then shot the man. So they're actually doing some research on whether or not they can track them down from
murder.
Yep. Colorado Department of Human Services missed a court-imposed deadline yesterday to complete the evaluation of the man who killed 10 people in the Boulder grocery store a while ago. Yes, they didn't do the evaluation of the 24-year-old.
What'd they say? I mean, that's crazy.
Oops, our bad. I don't know.
I mean, like,
yeah.
Oh, wait a minute.
I
had this on the calendar for next week, Judge.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Exactly. Sorry, we were binging Netflix. I don't know, but okay. Yeah.
What?
The Golden Globes were on, and we had to get ready. I don't know. Yeah. What was supposed to be a simple laundry room repair has turned into a nightmare for residents of a Congress Park apartment complex. The 7-story Live on Steel apartments near East 14th Avenue and Steel Streets have a power outage. They learned about it, and since then they've been kicked out of the apartment complex because it's too cold. So management company has offered tenants $125 in rent credit if they had to book a hotel or something else per night. But the outage has been lasting for quite a while, and the tenants are a little bit mad because, for obvious reasons. Newly arriving migrants who have nowhere to go can turn to a church in Denver's Sunnyside neighborhood. It is the Denver Friends Church. They are brainstorming ways to help migrants. They created encampments in areas throughout the city. So basically, they said they're going to try to create some space there at the church for some of the migrants and homeless, which is a good deal. Hope it works out for them. New study is breaking down how expensive it can be to rent an apartment right here in Colorado, but there could be some good news found in here. It's the online rental marketplace Zumper. Not really familiar with them. I know, Zumper. Don't know. I thought it was just he was like the weird cousin of that bunny and Bambi.
Or do you get zumped? I mean,
I guess so.
Oh, the Zumper got me.
Yeah, I had that happened once in college and it was awkward, and we don't talk about that anymore.
I was drunk though, so I didn't really feel it.
Reason, once they compared prices, they found Golden was the most expensive city to rent from right now. 1-bedroom median rent there is $1,800. Boulder and Castle Rock are at $1,800 and $1,790 respectively. Least expensive, Greeley, for obvious reasons. Thank you, Greeley. $1,100. And then in Inglewood, you can actually rent a 1-bedroom for about $1,200 to $1,300. Denver is the 20th most expensive city in the country, with 1-bedroom medium rent right around $1,700. National Western Stock Show is back, and it opened with over 100,000 attendees. 107,641 attended over the weekend. The first weekend attendance record was set last year, 109,000. So we missed that by about 2,000 people. So y'all suck. National Western Stock Show, though, today is going to be free. Yes, free admission. Yeah, free admission applies to everything that is not separately ticketed, like the rodeos and stuff. So basically, if you just want to walk in and wander around, you can go to the wandering yard, do some shopping, stuff like that. So yeah,
I still want to get the boys there. Want to get the boys there.
Yeah, you could do it today, but but they're back in school. So yeah, that's it. That's all I got.
Listen, I
want
to talk a little bit about this thing out of Boulder because you made me I don't know.
I know they just missed
inquisitive. So I read this article. This isn't good, man. This is the prosecutors are pissed off at the DHS. DHS not only misses a deadline, but they showed up to court to say, Judge, we'd like until April 30th.
What?
We'd like an April 30th to get this done. Sounds like the prosecutors are like, these guys have been dragging their feet. This is a quote from one of their filed documents here. A further delay in this case predicated by the need for hypothetical interviews with the defendant on a topic he has historically refused to discuss would be devastating for the victims of the case. This case has been dragging on for years because of the insanity stuff.
Yeah.
It sounds like DHS is broken.
It does.
It sounds like I don't get why they can't get this thing done. Maybe they're out there servicing planes or something.
Yeah. What is I want to know on the list of things. So what's higher ranking than getting to this? I mean, what is the stuff that is preventing you from getting this done? Which is, again, it is odd, but you and I both being parents, we've had this experience as well, where the kids come up to you and go, I've got this report, and it was assigned 2 months ago, and it's due tomorrow. And can you call me out because I'm going to be sick? And you're like, explain to me what you had been doing in the previous 2 months. What was it that was of such a need that took the place of this?
What I don't get is, and I appreciate that this is sort of the defense du jour. Everybody that does something horrible and evil runs to the mental health defense, right? I get that. So the state hospital, maybe they're overwhelmed, but this case has been pending for years. I can't think of a case that has a higher profile nature that they're dealing with other than a guy who walked into a King Soopers and murdered 10 people, including a police officer. It's like, well, how do you rank order these things? Is it just like, when it comes in, that's when we deal with it?
Exactly. And is it just when it comes in, it's assigned a number, and so you're just in the queue?
They just
eventually,
give 63.
Yeah, exactly. Now serving 1,416.
I also don't get how they wait until it's like due December 29th till they run up right on the deadline. Like at some point, you have to be looking down the road on the calendar and say, geez, in 2 weeks, that thing is due. I don't know what the hell we're doing here. Who is this guy? Which guy is this? It's just craziness. Listen, that's something I want to stick around for. For those of you that don't know, the DA up there in Boulder is a guy named Mike Doherty. He's a legit doc. I mean, a legit DA. I just said doc because Billy got my ear on Dr. Julia. Legit DA, even though he's a Democrat and finds himself supportive of the weak Democrats that we have at the state level. The way he approaches prosecution in his jurisdiction is undeniably criminal justice and public safety minded. The guy can walk and chew gum at the same time, and he's also a dude who puts himself, I really respect this, at the tip of the spear. This case goes to trial. Mike Doherty's in the courtroom trying it because that's what a real prosecutor does and can do. We don't see that as much anymore. We have people running for DA that don't have the chops to try a DUI, let alone a mass murder, but Mike Doherty isn't that guy. He can do it all. Hey, we're going to go right to the phone lines here only because she finally drug herself out of bed. It's friend of the show, Washington Huskies fan, Dr. Julia.
No, I would be the Michigan Wolverine fan.
Did they play the game?
They did play last night.
What took you so long to call in? I mean, is this like you're laying in bed, still recovering from the ether you gave yourself and Tony last night as you watched the game? Like 1 for you, 2 for me, that kind of thing?
No. I actually had my alarm set for 5 p.m. to wake up, not 5 a.m.
For all your patients out there, I'm sure they were like, this is a good sign.
No, and it was one of those, I was up, we were watching award ceremony, trophy ceremony, because Michigan went 15-0 and played a great game. The first quarter and the fourth quarter were their best quarters. The second was pretty good.
Third wasn't bad when they started with a pick, but I'll say this, going 15-0, that's historic. It's a big deal. I think everyone's going to wonder how they would have done without the cheating. I am one of those. So I don't know. Would they have gone 14-1? I don't know.
No, the kids on the field had nothing to do with it.
No, they were just the beneficiaries of the cheating. So
they played great and they played amazing, and they've had a great season. They've conquered a lot of adversity
that they created themselves. Michigan created the adversity. Like someone just showed up and said, aha, we're going to create this story of you cheating because you were cheating.
No, there was no cheating.
Oh my God.
On the field last night. They played great, and they had a great season. Defense was amazing. The defense, I think, won the last 2 games for them, and they were good sportsmen. Everything came together, and they crushed it. And you got to give them that. They won every game this season, and they were outstanding.
What was the SNL skit that was Harbaugh's speech up there on the stage when he got the trophy? What was that whole thing? Pull it down. Like that was very, Anchorman. I don't know how else to describe it.
I don't know. I think they were just trying to say that everything they did with all the adversity, with everything, they were able to bring it all together and crush the Huskies.
Yeah.
I know his dad was there. His brother was there.
Oh, his dad got to scream in the microphone. Yeah. Intermittently.
Nobody's got it better than us. Nobody's got it better than us.
Listen, enjoy it. Revel in it.
It's great to be a Michigan Wolverine today.
Let's keep doing this every year as they spiral out of control, and many of them are ultimately indicted and banned from the NFL for various things. I want to continue to have this conversation with you, Dr. Julie. Enjoy this. Love this moment.
I'm pretty happy today. I woke up late, but pretty happy.
I guess I'm just hopeful that whatever it was you and Tony celebrated with last night has worn off by the time you make incision number 1.
He wasn't even home. He was at some event down at the Western Stock Show, and it was just me and the boys watching the game.
Oh, well, that would be pretty sweet. Hold on. Your Citadel guy is home?
Yeah, he's home.
When does he go back?
He goes back to tomorrow.
Yeah, superstar. You guys have somehow figured out a way to breed a superstar. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. We're proud of our kids. We really are.
You should be. Good luck. We'll talk with you soon. Go Huskies.
All right. Go Blue.
Yeah, blue. It's past tense for blow. Hey, when we come back, we're going to do the good stuff here. That is, you choose the news. Stick around. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. Normally I would wait for the but it takes like 32 minutes to get to that exact point. George Brauchler back with you here on The George Show. It's time to turn it over for the next to be legitimately endorsed segment of the show. You choose the news.
Yes, sir. It is that time of the morning where we get to play everybody's favorite fake radio news game show. You choose the news. And as always, we have scoured the interwebs for mere moments this morning to find really stupid stories about us humans, giving them even dumber headlines to play this fake radio news game. And we are definitely not sponsored by Layer Fireplace and Patio Furniture. They want to stay as far away from this clown show as possible, and we respect that. So they are not the sponsor of this segment, but we do appreciate them. Alrighty, sir. Here are your headlines this morning. Headline number 1, man discovers he's a Disney princess. Headline number 2, at least it's on their to-do list. Headline number 3, do they lack the technology or the science? And headline number 4, a gift from beyond. Your headlines
But
yet
no,
again.
no, dude.
Yeah.
Disney princess. Come on, let's be honest.
Man discovers he is a Disney princess. We are traveling to the lovely country of Wales, and we are going to meet Mr. Holbrook, who is 75 years old. Rodney Holbrook recently had noticed that in and around his workbench in his shed, things have been moved and curiously organized overnight. Almost as if something or someone had been visiting him and organizing them. He had been then doing some testing, leaving bottle caps, Swiss ties, bolts, and nuts all over, and they were organized again neatly into little tiny bins by the morning. He had to figure out what was happening. That's when he set up a night vision camera and figured out it's his friend the mouse.
What?
A mouse has been coming into his workshop at night, and it actually cleans up his workbench. Yes, he has video of it going over, and if he puts like a bunch of screws and nuts, it goes and it gathers the screws and nuts and puts them into a little bin, and then it goes around and puts all the twist ties together. Yes, so it goes and it cleans up his workspace for him in the morning.
This is workspace Ratatouille?
Exactly. He's a Disney princess.
That's
Fantastic.
amazing.
I know. I am just shocked by it. Alrighty, so second choice. At least it's on the to-do list. Do they like the technology or the science? And a gift from beyond.
Beyond.
A gift from beyond. A 62-year-old woman has won a fantastic recent court case. Justice Fiona Seward has granted this woman permission to violate her husband's dead body.
Okay. Oh, wait.
Yes, this happens in Western Australia. The 62-year-old petitioned the court and said, my husband has died unexpectedly.
Okay.
And we had been talking about having kids in the recent past. Our children, a 29-year-old daughter drowned in 2013, and our 30-year-old son died in 2019. We had been married for 39 years. Even though I'm 62, I want a bun in the oven. And so the judge said that, yes, you can harvest the dead man's sperm. And
Can
then
you harvest a dead man's sperm? I mean, is that even possible?
So many questions. How and the process. But the judge says you can get it and you can impregnate yourself
What's that
if you want to.
with the needle and all that stuff?
I know.
You got to slip in. Is there a
exactly?
I don't.
At least
nuts.
the patient. At least the patient's not complaining. I mean, you know.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. If everything goes wrong, you get a scream.
Exactly.
Ah!
There's nothing there.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So your final choice. At least it's on the to-do list, or do they like the technology or the science?
To-do list.
Yeah, at least it is on their to-do list. And this, we're traveling to Vietnam. Yes, not always the most wonderful place for the U.S. to visit, given our past. But still, Vietnam says they are ready to implement their human rights reforms. They have announced a whole series of reforms that they are going to be making to human rights. And they say this is great because they've been a frequent critic. People are not mad about how they, recently, the Freedom House, that's a liberal organization, gave them a score of 19 out of 100 as far as human rights. They do a lot of murder, torture, and stuff like that. And so Vietnam says, yes, we are going to change human rights eventually.
Oh.
They say that it's on the
Pace
schedule.
yourself.
Yeah, it's on the schedule to hopefully they'll reach that goal by December 31st of 2099.
Oh, well.
Yeah. So they're
hold on.
hoping that in 75 years in the future that they will finally have figured out their human rights problems. But for the next 75 years, give us a little bit of a break.
Seems like it coincides with some of these asylum claims.
Yes, exactly.
You know?
I know. Same thing. Alrighty, sir. That is all I've got.
Listen,
Back to you.
that does it for the 6 o'clock hour and all the good paid for endorsed stuff right here. When we come back, it's going to be Sherry Pie. You can find all of her great works at Complete Colorado page 2. Stick around. George Brauchler on the George Show at 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. It is that hour when normally, of course, we would have Sherry Pife on from Complete Colorado, page 2. I imagine she is still recovering from her post-Wolverine victory hangover with Dr. Julie. I should have asked if they were sharing the ether last night during the game, but we are scrambling to find Sherry right now. I'm certain that she's probably just trapped under something heavy. In the meantime, though, we have some other stuff I wanted to talk to you about. It's interesting to me that we are confronted with a campaign that seems like it's a juggernaut, it's a runaway, but the stories end up becoming about all of these other side issues, the challengers. I mean, listen, I know that the state party in Colorado, the state GOP, wants to sort of pre-bless off on Trump and say we're going to come out and endorse him. I can't think of anything that is more contrary to the purposes that a party serves, especially during a primary. But I'm not in charge. I'm not part of the central committee or the executive committee anymore. I'm just a regular dude who happens to be a Republican. Now, having said that, one of the things that has taken place is a series of polls that get done. And if you looked at today's polling, and I think it was Rasmussen, it could have been something else, Nikki Haley is right up on Donald Trump in New Hampshire. She is now single digits away from him. New Hampshire, I'm not going to say it's Trump's Waterloo, but it is definitely a weak spot in the campaign trail for him. In Iowa, it seems like the biggest threat to Trump will be failing to hit expectations. There's no doubt he's going to win. There's no doubt he's going to win by double digits. His own folks are out there saying things like, hey, nobody has won Iowa by more than 12 points since Bob Dole. That's a big deal. We're going to hit that. I think that's true. The question is, does he eclipse 50%? If he doesn't, what does that say? But in New Hampshire, it's different. In New Hampshire, he's polling at under 40. Nikki Haley has seen a 12-point surge. She's up around 31, 32 points. Interestingly, fourth place is not Ron DeSantis. So it goes Trump, Haley, Christie, number 4. Billy Blaze Ramaswamy is number 4 with 8%. And then DeSantis way down at 5%. Folks, I'm only guessing here, but it seems to me that a week from now, when the Iowa caucuses have taken place, if Ron DeSantis doesn't have a strong second place showing, I think he's going back to Florida, because he's not going to get any sort of a bounce from New Hampshire. He's going to have to crawl into South Carolina. And I just don't think it's going to turn into anything good. So this is why he's spending every moment there. This is the end for Ron DeSantis if he can't come up with a convincing second place win. And it's looking more and more like maybe that won't happen. Now, I've seen a bunch of social media posts from Vivek Ramaswamy, and dude is like, be prepared for a shocker, man. We're going to shock the world. Every single presidential cycle, somebody says that. Everybody says that. It never, ever happens. We'll see if it happens here. One quick thing before we get onto this Civil War topic, because it's important. The Vivek Ramaswamy thing is interesting to me because I think what this guy is doing, I don't know what he's planning for right now, but this guy is doing a good job of cultivating the next generation of voters. And I know that because friends of mine who are Trump people or DeSantis people or Haley people, their kids like Vivek Ramaswamy, mostly their sons, but their kids like Ramaswamy. And I'm wondering if that isn't something about the future. I wonder if that doesn't foretell that this guy 4 years from now isn't a much bigger player than he is right now. Just very interesting, something I want to keep an eye on. Anecdotal, right? Like no studies to show that, nothing like that. It's just out there. Now, you would think that the Civil War, having been so long in the rearview mirror, would be a matter that we could either all agree upon its causes or how it was conducted. That's not true, apparently. Those things are still debatable because they've been debated on the campaign trail. Nikki Haley, who right now, like all the guns are trained on her, right? Especially Trump's, because he can feel her breathing down his neck in New Hampshire. And every misstep is going to be amplified. And sure enough, she had one that was amplified. And it was in response to a question about the Civil War. I keep thinking about the 9-year-old kid with the planted question. But this is one about the Civil War. Billy has found the sound and has it right here.
Well, don't come with an easy question or anything. I mean, I think the cause of the Civil War was basically how government was going to run, the freedoms and what people could and couldn't do. What do you think the cause of the Civil War was?
That's weird. I mean, that's weird. How government was going to run and what freedoms you couldn't have. I suppose the freedoms that some people couldn't have were freedom. But it seems to me that she got beaten up a bunch in the media because she didn't come right out and say what I think is obvious to anyone, and that is that slavery was the ultimate cause of the Civil War. That's not me saying it. That's Abraham Lincoln talking about, just look at his second inaugural address. Yeah, the Confederates say it. I mean, so are there states' rights issues? Yes, but let's be honest, the states' rights were to own people. I mean, so at the end of the day, it was a slavery thing. So she gets slapped around a lot, beaten about the face and neck over a failure to acknowledge with her very first answer. And I get how this happens. Slavery as the ultimate cause of the Civil War. But then the Civil War shows up again over this weekend. But my guess is you didn't probably hear it because it didn't get the same kind of traction. And that's interesting from the legacy media. And it makes me wonder why they didn't make a bigger deal of this. Maybe it's because there's already so much stuff about DJT that this would just get lost in that chorus. But Trump was talking about the Civil War, and he said, Billy, you've got that sound?
The Civil War was so fascinating, so horrible. It was so horrible, but so fascinating. It was, I don't know, it was just different. I just find it, I'm so attracted to seeing it. So many mistakes were made. See, there was something I think could have been negotiated, to be honest with you. I think you could have negotiated that. All the people died. So many people died. But I was thinking to myself, because I was reading something, and I said, this is something that could have been negotiated. It was just for all those people to die, and they died viciously. That was a vicious, vicious war. And in many ways, look, they're all this, nothing nice about it, but boy, that was a tough one for our country. But I think it's, Abraham Lincoln. Of course, if you negotiated it, you probably wouldn't even know who Abraham Lincoln was. He would have been president, but he would have been president. He wouldn't have been the Abraham Lincoln. Would have been different, but that would have been okay. It would have been a thing that, and I know it very well. I know the whole process that they went through, and they just couldn't get along. And that would have been something that could have been negotiated, and they wouldn't have had that problem. But it was a hell of a time.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's tough, man. And this is not a, I don't know. I just don't even know how to respond to that. Did he get no questions after this? We were going to negotiate away the Civil War. Do you believe that? And I guess the question for me is, there's a couple layers to this. One is, why the disparity in treatment? Nikki Haley gets punched in the face by the media and frankly, by folks in the Republican Party over a failure to acknowledge that slavery was the ultimate cause of the Civil War. And yes, states' rights is part of that, but remember, it's all tied into slavery. You have the former president of the United States, who's on the verge of becoming the president of the United States again, say this gong show stuff like we could have negotiated away the Civil War, which is ignorant of the fact that for, I don't know, the 70 years before this, we were trying to negotiate away the Civil War. Whether it was through the Missouri Compromise or all of the other things that took place that nobody else, I guess, acknowledges during this speech. But does this have any impact on you? When you hear this, does it change a single thing for you? And I'm not asking you to beat up on Trump. I'm just saying there is a disparity in treatment here. This guy can say or do almost anything with utter impunity. And it doesn't matter that the legacy media attacks him, because the folks watching the legacy media are folks that aren't going to vote for him anyway, right? But do you believe that the Civil War could have been negotiated away, and that his takeaway from that is, wow, if Lincoln had done that, we wouldn't know who Lincoln was today in the same way. He wouldn't have been the Abraham Lincoln, as if going to war was the thing that elevated his ID, that gave him the fame, the notoriety. Folks, I don't know what to do with this, because this is a guy who is ignorant of history, our own history. I don't pretend to be a historian. I'm not. I've learned the things that I've learned from actual book reading and schooling and stuff like that, things I've done on my own. I mean, maybe it began with, the Killer Angels, and it turned into watching Ken Burns thing, which spurred me to read a whole bunch of biographies, and then ultimately ended with War College, where you talk about things like this. But this is gong show stuff, folks. Like, we were going to negotiate away the Civil War. Which part were we going to negotiate away? Were we going to convince the South to give up on slavery, or the secession part? I mean, my concern here is that this is all in the context of Ukraine and Israel and Hamas. Like, is this how this guy's going to conduct business moving forward? And that is to just negotiate away these things? I don't know what to think. 303-696-1971. Someone texted in, slavery was a states' rights issue. Yeah, I agree with you. But it was slavery, right? It wasn't states' rights issue like, we demand to have our own flag. And everyone said, no, you can't have your own flag. We demand to have our own taxes. That wasn't it. Here's another text. He's the diplomat. He's looking for a diplomatic solution. Well, I'm sorry. That's stupid. You can't have a diplomatic solution to things like, I don't know, the Holocaust. I mean, do you see this guy saying we could negotiate away World War II?
And the other part, though, is the idea of saying, well, he's a diplomat. Yes, but the issue is he's ignorant of the history. We had already negotiated slavery a number of times. There were a series of agreements between the North and the South about slavery. We were trying to do the separate thing, and it wasn't working. That's kind of the point. So the idea that Trump comes in and goes, well, I could have negotiated. They've been doing it. He doesn't know the previous history. He's ignorant of that. He doesn't know the history leading up to the Civil War. And part of it you can tell because when he talks about Abraham Lincoln, he goes, the Abraham Lincoln. He knows there's a nickname there, but he can't find it. He doesn't know he's the great emancipator. He can't pull that. And again, anybody that calls in, I'd love to have you call in and say it was a states' rights issue. Go through the Confederate founding documents and tell me why they said they broke away. Go through the states that broke away the Confederacy.
But
I'm
not going to disagree with states' rights, but it was the states' rights to authorize slavery, the owning of another human being within their borders. That's a slavery issue, not a states' rights issue. The part that concerns me here is this guy who's about to become our next president. Not only is he ignorant of history, but there is a hubris that runs through this, isn't there? This idea that maybe he could negotiate away everything. Well, I'm sorry. You can't negotiate away evil. And owning another person is evil. The Holocaust is evil. How do you, this idea that it's diplomatic or that this is what a good businessman does? Well, I'm sorry. At some point, you can't just file for bankruptcy in the war with the Nazis or in the war with the South that's going to break away and divide up America. I mean, I imagine there are some folks out there who think we should have just let the South go. Do you really believe that? Do you think America would be what it is today? You would be where you are today if that had happened? Would we have a better America if we'd allowed half the country to break off so that they could own other people of color? I don't. I mean, there's a reason that Abraham Lincoln is in the same breath as Washington as two of the greatest presidents of all time. We're about to hit President's Day, which is a stupid holiday because it used to be Washington and Lincoln's birthdays. That mattered because those two are special. But the idea that we're going to honor Grover Cleveland and Bill Clinton in President's Day, forgive me, honoring an office holder? No, I don't think so. But that's where we're at. But this is what's important, is the idea. I don't understand this guy. He just says stuff and he just gets away with saying stuff. And when it comes to the Civil War and we're going to negotiate it away, do you shrug it off and just say, not that big a deal? Or do you find yourself scrambling, trying to justify those comments by saying things like, well, he's trying to be a diplomat? Why would you defend those comments? Someone should have pulled him aside and said, enough, move on. Start talking about injecting Clorox into your veins to cure COVID, but please stay away from the idea that you were going to negotiate away the ownership of people by another people. That's just not going to happen. But my concern here is, one, it's a sign of this hubris that runs through every decision he makes. But two, What does this mean for Ukraine? I mean, if you're Zelensky and Putin, you have to look at this timeline and say to yourself, what happens in November if this dude wins? If you're Zelensky, it's over, right? Like Trump's going to show up and say, well, which part of your country did you want to keep? And we'll give away the other parts to appease Putin. And if you're Putin, you can't wait. Dude loves dictators. And he's going to say, look, I negotiated away a peace in Ukraine. And the right-wing folks, and including folks on this station, are going to clap and applaud. Yay, yay. And then what? What else are we negotiating away? Are we going to negotiate away Israel and Hamas? I mean, that's the concern right now, is that Biden, Blinken's over there right now. Biden's going to blink in. And they're going to end up saying, hey, Israel, we're not going to support you getting rid of Hamas anymore. Folks, some things cannot be negotiated away. Some things are not there to serve as a way to build up your name ID or your popularity. I don't understand what's happening, but nonetheless, this may be one of the things that shows up in New Hampshire. I don't know. But Nikki Haley is now about 6-7 points away from Trump in at least this Rasmussen poll. Now, folks have texted in. I've seen some social media stuff where people are like, I can't find a single Haley voter. I don't know any Haley voters. I believe you. Because your group is probably largely Trump people. I get it. If you're a Trump person, you're not a Haley person. But I know a ton of people out there who have pinged me and said, I'll be honest with you, she doesn't bring the controversy. She doesn't bring the distraction. I kind of like her. I've had a lot of that lately through texts. A lot of moms, too, by the way, who are like, I like Nikki Haley. I'd love to see Nikki Haley progress further. Now, that doesn't mean she's going to win. She's not. I mean, short of something else happening, she's not. But this stuff is just one more thing that makes me question, what are we doing here? Now, I don't buy off on any of this Biden doomsday stuff as he scrambles to try to save a failing campaign. I mean, listen, when you've lost Barack and Michelle, you've lost a lot, right? Like, they should be his number one cheerleaders because he was part of their team. Remember big effing deal and all that when they hijacked and broke healthcare in America? But they're concerned too. So this guy has a flailing campaign, a flagging campaign, and then shows up to give this, it's the end of times as we know it if Trump gets elected thing. I'm not there, but I do have some concerns, man. I mean, I don't know. 303-696-1971. I'm just interested in your thoughts on this. Here's one. Passing the Emancipation Proclamation was timed perfect by Lincoln. Southern states seceded. Northern states passed the proclamation. That actually happened after secession. 13th Amendment, I believe, was during the Civil War. Here's another one. The South found that the North would not enforce the Fugitive Slave Act and claimed they have the right to hunt down humans in northern states. I believe that as well. That was part of that too. Another one. George, Trump's assessment of the Civil War was a subjective opinion. Okay, Gino, I'll read the rest of the clip, but what does that mean? If the Civil War could have negotiated before it began, it would have saved 700,000 lives. They tried, Gino, they tried to negotiate it, right? Over 70 prior years, they gave and they gave and they gave, and there was no end to this seeming commitment to wanting to own another people. What if Trump could have negotiated with the South to abolish slavery? I find that acceptable, not so whack as you're implying. Gino, you and I are just going to respectfully disagree here. That is one of the crack smoke craziest things I've ever heard, that had Trump been there, or anyone had been in a position to negotiate away slavery. What was the crack in that pro-slavery fissure that you see? Yeah, well, and what do you negotiate? What are you giving away? I mean, are you going to sit down and just convince them, by the way, these people that you whip, that you torture, that you beat, that you separate after you breed them and all that, these people are human beings and you ought to treat them like human beings. And then they go, oh, wait, when you say it like that, now I feel like, I mean, what are you negotiating away? Hey, get rid of slavery and we'll let you carve off your own country? I don't get it. Here's another text. I love the fact that Haley continually brings up that chaos follows Trump and it's exhausting. Well, that's true, man. It does. My wife is center left Dem and loves Nikki Haley. Well, there's something too. And that polling that shows, I can't remember who did it, that she has a 17-point lead on Biden if it were a head-to-head matchup. Again, she's not going to win. It's going to be Trump. Trump's going to win the primary. Trump's likely going to win the presidency. I'm just saying, when he says things like this and nobody pulls the reins back, nobody pulls him aside and says, even if it was just a speculative opinion, Gino, that's crazy. What if he had said, what if we could have negotiated away the Holocaust? What if we could have convinced the Nazis to just stop interning Jews and putting them in ovens and gassing them? What if we could have saved so many lives? How are you going to do that? Once a people is committed to the idea that the people they're killing or enslaving aren't the same as them, don't deserve the same respect, what's the negotiation? It's the same freaking thing with Hamas. Once you have a people that are committed to beheading babies, what's the negotiation? What's that thing you say to them that's, I'll trade you this for that? It's silly. It hurts my brain to try to think about it. And I'm not the historian, but find me someone that says, gosh, we were so close to negotiating away slavery. We were so close to keeping it all together. If we had just traded what? Steel for slaves? Access to ports? I mean, what was the thing that was going to get the South to go, you know what, on second thought? Owning people is counterproductive. I mean, the North had already blown past the model with the cotton gin, right? They'd already blown past that. Industrialization caused the economy in the North to explode while the South was still languishing with their largely agricultural economy. I don't know. I could go on, but it's an interesting conversation, not from the standpoint of could it have been negotiated away, but does it matter to you that this guy who's about to become president of the United States thinks like this? Someone texted in here, just tuned in, what's being negotiated. This is just a reference. Listen, I'm just interested to know what your thoughts are. Is this a big deal? Is it not a big deal? Does it concern you that a guy who's about to be the president of the United States believes that slavery could have been negotiated away back in 1861 and we could have avoided the loss of nearly 700,000 Americans through that 4+ year Civil War? I mean, do you believe that? And if you don't, is it okay for the guy you're going to vote for to have come out and said those things out loud? I don't know. There's more sound out there. We'll try to get to that. Hey, listen, stick around. Before we cut away, though, I want to tell you about Rocky Mountain Men's Clinic. These are folks out there solving a problem that it's just hard for dudes to admit. I understand that. You get to that place in life, whether it's a function of diet, stress, normal life activities, just getting older, that your body doesn't produce the kind of testosterone and other things that it should to allow you to be, whether it's that hard charging guy that works out, maybe it's performance with your significant other. I get it. I understand, right? Like, these are problem solvers for a problem that is truly life-changing. Like, we talk about a lot of great things out there on this program through advertisers. This single one can turn your life around on the issues that kind of hover around the back of your head if you're dealing with this. It's so easy to just pick up the phone and call them at 720-440-7900. Just have a conversation. Just talk to them about what they can do. They can help you with your New Year's resolution, which is to get you back. You want to reverse that sluggish, kind of low energy feeling. Sleep pattern sucks. Mine has for 14 years. These are folks that can deal with the low testosterone issue. It's not your fault. This is just your body going through what your body goes through. You can't be blamed for this. This isn't because you were a smoker at 18 or because you took a couple shots before you were 21. It's not like that. These guys can reverse that. RockyMountainMen'sClinic.com. RockyMountainMen'sClinic.com. They've been doing this for more than a decade. They've treated tens of thousands of men. Why not be the beneficiary of their expertise? 720-440-7900. 720-440-7900. Stick around. We'll get to your calls, your text. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Hey, let me tell you about something you can do, not for yourself physically, not like the good folks that do all the things that improve your health, because we got a ton of them, and I love those folks, but the things that improve your quality of life through upgrading your home. And I'm talking about our friends Joyce and Brent Tolliver at Roll 'em Out Shelves. They're the folks that find a way to make that cabinet space that seems like it's just dead space, like it's a place where you put the seasonal things you never get to into something usable. I've had them at my house. They've come up with a plan. I've got to execute on it, but they've got so many creative ideas. You can find them at rollemoutshelves.com. They got the videos of how they do the installation with their employees, not subcontractors, employees. That just gives you a better quality. And they can begin the transformational part of this house less than $1,000. Less than $1,000. Free in-home estimate. All you need to do is to pick up the phone and call them at 303-475-9601. 303-475-9601. They are some of the nicest people that you're ever going to meet. Rollemoutshelves.com. That's rollemoutshelves.com. Now, listen, we've been talking about a couple things here. It's really based on the text, man. It's kind of morphed into this Haley versus Trump sort of a thing here. It was born of two things. One, this latest polling, a CNN poll and a Rasmussen poll, have Nikki Haley within single digits of Donald Trump at New Hampshire. Now, it seems a little bit silly to talk about that because it looks like she's still going to lose New Hampshire and she's still going to lose Iowa. Hell, she may come in third behind DeSantis in Iowa. Don't know yet. This is not, hey, the end is near. I'm not telling you that. I'm just saying it's interesting to me that she has had the surge that she's had. And while that surge has been going on, the attempts to derail her by Trump and DeSantis and certainly Vivek, my God, Vivek can't stop beating on Nikki Haley. They're real, but she's helped them in a way. And she had this quote, this answer to a Civil War question about the cause of the Civil War. And she omitted that slavery was a cause. And then she got beaten up over it. Meanwhile, over the weekend, President Trump talks about being able to or suggesting that what if the Civil War could have been negotiated, which just feels silly to me. I don't know what that opening would have been. I can't, but what it shows me as a voter and a consumer of this information is that he doesn't know history, but two, there's a degree of hubris there. Like this guy thinks he's capable of anything. That breeds recklessness. That breeds the kind of decision-making that leads to bad outcomes. And somebody texted in here and said, I wonder if Trump thinks he could have done better than Neville Chamberlain. Great point. I mean, when Chamberlain travels out east and gives away the Sudetenland to the Nazis, to Hitler, by the way, and do you remember the argument? That was historically and culturally German lands. Where have we heard that kind of language? Oh, yeah, Ukraine from Putin. Oh, these are culturally and historically Russian lands. That's why they belong in our hands. Well, Neville Chamberlain gave in to Hitler. That didn't seem to work out too well. Are we going to see the next president of the United States give in to Putin and give up Ukraine? And I get it, man. I mean, listen, this is the 7:00 hour, and we get followed in a couple hours by Charlie Kirk and Dennis Prager and Seb Gorka and all the smart guys. And Charlie is a big opponent of Zelensky and our efforts in Ukraine. I just disagree with him. Dude's smarter than I am. He's more successful, younger, better looking, all that stuff. He's just wrong. I'm just telling you, he's just wrong. This idea that we're going to use Ukraine as a vehicle to beat up on Biden is silly. This is an opportunity for us to stand up for right versus wrong. Not to say that Zelensky's great. It's not to say that all the people in his administration are ethical and there's no crime. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying there's an opportunity to stand up to evil, right? There's an opportunity to stand up to the bad guys. And here, without question, whether it's standalone or comparative, the Russians are the bad guys. Putin is a bad guy. He's an evil dude, and he invaded another country, used whatever excuses we're willing to allow him to give to try to take over land that isn't his, that doesn't belong to Russia. And now we're talking about, well, we'll negotiate it away. I will end that war in the very first day. The only way that war ends is if we surrender part of Ukraine. Not even our country, by the way. We surrender part of Ukraine. But this gets us to the Civil War thing. This guy believes the Civil War could have been negotiated away. And I've got folks here that have texted in. Here's one. The Emancipation Proclamation was passed by the Senate April 1864, while the war raged on. Later, 1865 by the House, leaving the southern states out. He said, this is same texter, smart guy. Slavery was negotiated away. Proclamation applied only to states that seceded. Some of the border states were exempted. So Trump was right. Some states were negotiated. No, he wasn't right. You could not. He's not talking about negotiating a couple states here or there or the end of the war. He's talking about having avoided the war entirely by negotiating. I want to know how he'd have done it. I want someone to tell me what would he have traded for slavery? What would he have traded? I don't understand this texter. OMG, please don't mimic Biden. I don't know what that means. I don't know what it means to mimic Biden. George, don't forget Trump met with Kim Jong-un, North Korea, and negotiated a temporary truce and prevented a war breaking out. I was impressed. Listen, please don't hear me to say that there is no room for negotiation in geopolitics. I'm not saying that at all. But on the issue of what do we do when we own other people and treat them like property instead of people, the slavery issue, tell me how you see that being negotiated away. Tell me if you believe Neville Chamberlain was right, because we're about to Neville Chamberlain Ukraine here. And what do you do with Hamas? You and I can talk about whether or not we should be involved in these things through our financial support and military support. I'm happy to have those conversations. But the part that I don't think is debatable, not from the Western mind, not from our set of values, is who are the bad guys. Without question, Putin is the bad guy. Without question, Hamas is the bad guy. Without question, Hitler was the bad guy. And without question, those who led the Civil War for the purposes of maintaining the institution of slavery were bad guys. I'm not talking about the foot soldiers who went because they thought they were defending their homes. I'm talking about the big policy guys. They weren't fighting for their land. They were fighting for people to own. How do you negotiate that away? 303-696-1971. It's our good friend Brian from Arvada. Brian, how are you, my man?
Hey, George, I'm doing good. I think, a lot of the problem here is Trump's words, his bravado. I don't like all of that stuff, but policies, George, it's all about policies this time around, not the man, not the cult of personality. It's about policies. I sure like Trump's policies.
Give me an example of the ones that you're looking for that he's pushing right now.
Close the borders.
I agree with the close the borders. I agree with stay outside the country.
Lower corporate taxes, which actually lowering taxes provides more money to the Treasury than ever. Interest rates down to 2.3 or 2.5 like they were. Independent oil.
How's he going to get the interest rates down?
Well, because when people are working, money costs less, and so people can afford stuff. People that you only raise the interest rates, George, when inflation is off the charts. So the inflation wasn't off the charts under Trump.
Well,
how about drill here, drill now?
The unemployment rate ain't bad. It's not great. It ain't bad. I'm not sure how he's going to do the interest rate thing, but on this issue, and you have to agree, Brian, that these geopolitical things, they're front and center, right? Like he doesn't just get to focus on the domestic stuff. That's what Bush thought. And then all of a sudden we had 9/11. Do you worry at all about his approach to geopolitical negotiations or diplomacy with this kind of a mindset that we could have negotiated away the Civil War? And when he says that, one, do you agree? And two, if you don't, is it because he's ignorant of history or what?
No, he's not ignorant of history. I mean, he's not a history buff by all means, but he's not ignorant on history. The guy's a master deal maker. And what I can tell you, George, Russia didn't attack Ukraine under Trump. I wonder why.
No, I know, but they're there now. I give you that. They invaded when Biden was president.
Well, We're giving them $4 billion every freaking other month. And this country's going to hell. And we're giving these guys $4 billion. I'm not a fan of the Ukraine war. All those other countries surrounding them, they need to step up and help out. You know what I'm saying? We're not the brunt. We're not the world's police officer. And so I agree with Trump. They didn't do. We're going to have less wars under Trump, not more. I can tell you that right now. Because
but at what
we
expense?
didn't have any wars under Trump.
At what expense?
But as soon as he's gone, whatever expense.
I mean, what do we give away to avoid
First.
conflict? What would you give away to avoid conflict?
How about peace through strength, which is exactly what Reagan said, which is what Trump did.
But hear me out then. What is strong about giving into Putin and sitting down on day one and saying, hey, what is it you want? What can we give you? How is that strength?
It's not giving Ukraine over to him, but it's saying it's coalescing other countries around it instead of we're not providing them troops, but we're just sending our money over there, our treasure over there. Sorry, I'm over it. Too bad.
So how do you want to see that thing resolve? You want to see Trump negotiate what with Putin?
Oh, I think if Trump came back in, Putin would back off.
You think he would leave Ukraine?
Trump.
You think he would leave Ukraine?
I think he would realize Trump would make some pretty bold statements. The military would do some pretty bold fronting, and Russia doesn't want to get in war with us.
The part I don't get with that approach, Brian, and I've heard you're not the only one that said this. Charlie Kirk's of a similar mind, and all these others is this idea that he's so strong, and people are so worried that he would use the military that they would leave Ukraine, and they would not have invaded Ukraine, and yet. What we're cheering on is the idea that this guy would never use the military. Like we don't have a president that would use the military. I'm missing the point on people are afraid he would use it when he has come out and said, I simply wouldn't use it. I'm going to end the Ukraine war on day one. I don't know how you do that, but the negotiation piece is the part that gets me. It's not just his ignorance of the history, but this idea that we could have negotiated away slavery. Could we? Do you think we could have negotiated away slavery?
Not negotiated it away. I think that was going to happen no matter what. I think there could have been some compromises made, but that was 200 years ago. We weren't making compromises. We were fighting it out. I mean,
but we did compromise. We actually had something called the Missouri Compromise. I mean, we spent every year after the Constitution dealing with the institution of slavery and trying to negotiate with the South, and it never, ever worked. What I worry about is this guy's going to show up and negotiate peace, not out of strength, but peace just for peace sake. And what do you do with Hamas? What would he do with Hamas? What would Trump do with Hamas? Let
Israel take care of it. Because they know how to and stop condemning them for so many innocent lives are being killed. Now listen, let Israel take care of it.
Yeah, but we have put a ton of our treasure in the form of military movements. We have, I think, 2 aircraft carrier groups in the area. All of that is there at our expense to facilitate Israel doing this. Is that okay?
I'm probably not even a fan of that either, George. I really, I just don't want to fight other people's wars. If they're desperate and they need our help, let's help them in some way, but let's coalesce around other countries. We can't just be pouring $4 billion into Ukraine, George, and there's no results. What are the results? We've held Putin back. Have we stopped the war by giving them all this money?
Pardon me. Excuse me. Got a question here, Brian. You wanted to ask what the result was of all the money that we've given to Ukraine. I have a direct result for you. That if I would come to you, I'm just saying that I'm postulating that if I came to you early on and said, here is the result of us putting all this money into Ukraine, you might take me up on this offer. Here's the idea. Russia invaded with 360,000 troops. As of the last report from our very own Department of Defense, Russia has lost or had killed 300,000 troops. They had a standing army before invading Ukraine of 900,000.
Wow.
That is an attrition of not only most of their invasion force, but also 1/3 of their standing army. Russia's army has been devastated by a loss of 1/3 of the troops, and we haven't spent a single American life or a drop of American blood to accomplish that. We have spent money. And so if I came to you before the Ukraine war and said, I've got a way for us to cut a check, that in part 60% of that around goes back into the U.S. economy, and we are going to take out 1/3 of the active Russian military. Do you want in? What's your answer, Brian? Do you want in on that or not?
If those are true facts,
They
Billy,
are.
if the 60% came back to our economy, which I don't believe one bit,
Okay.
but if that's true, I would probably consider it. But spending this billions of dollars in Ukraine, I'm not for it.
Okay,
Let's
Brian,
get the other
Brian,
countries and the
excuse
whole
me,
world can
excuse
step
me,
up.
Brian, excuse me.
Why can't the whole
Excuse
world
me,
step
Brian.
up?
Brian, can you talk to me about how we partition
Watch
our
your
aid?
time.
Okay, how do we partition our aid, Brian? How is the aid sending over there? Are we sending them giant novelty checks? How is the aid being sent over, Brian? That's important.
Yeah, I mean, what we're gonna say for food and supplies and for military equipment,
we're sending
whatever the Pentagon says.
We are sending them equipment and sometimes training. Nearly 60% of the money that is being sent to Ukraine is actually being purposed and respent back here in America, because when we send them ammo, the U.S. military has to replace that. That means the U.S. military goes out and buys more ammo. When we send them older vehicles, we replace those vehicles based on attrition. So we are now, the old vehicles that we sent there, we are now cutting checks for the companies of the Department of Defense to buy new vehicles. This is in part a jobs program here in the U.S. Nearly 60% of the aid money that is going to Ukraine is being spent either in America, on American companies, or with Americans. Because when the Americans go over and train the Ukrainians how to use this defense system or help them with the food resources and everything, that's American dollars that are paying them.
Where does it end?
Yeah.
When Ukraine is free, because geopolitically we need them.
Right. And when is that, Billy?
I don't know that we know. I don't know that we know the answer,
Years
but I do think
billions
though,
of more dollars,
I
all
don't know.
justified
Could we take out
because
another
of
third
this
of the Russian
program?
military at the same time?
I don't know the answer. It's one of those ones where I'm not smart enough to tell you that there's an end date, but that's true of every war. I mean, like I can't tell you when Israel finishes up with Hamas in Gaza, but we're going to see that thing through.
There should be
But you can't do that with war. You can't.
There can't just be checks written and just continue to be written without any kind of end in sight. The American people aren't for that. They're not supporting that. They're not supporting for endless checks.
It sounds like what we're going to support, though, Brian. And by the way, thank you, man, for the extended call. But
thanks, bro.
Yeah, we're going. I love that you listen and call. At the end of the day, man, the problem here is we're stuck with a situation that we didn't create, but we've got to respond to. And if we're about to elect someone to the White House that is all about not peace through strength, but just peace for peace sake, like I could have negotiated this outcome, that kind of recklessness, that's how you get taken advantage of. As people in business, man, you want an overconfident person to show up and negotiate with you. There's more to this stuff. Listen, 303-696-1971. Lots of texts coming in. Give us a call. Let's have this conversation. I love that Brian did too. Going to cut away for a break. When we come back, we'll finish up this segment. We'll get into the 8 o'clock hours. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here. Final seconds of the show. In the 8 o'clock hour, we're going to have Richard Holtorf. He is I believe he's a representative. He's a senator. I apologize. But he is going to be running. He is running for Congress out here in the 4th Congressional District. Have a great conversation with him and see what that spurs in terms of response from y'all at the texts and the phone calls. Stick around. It's George Brauchler on The George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Halfway through the morning show at 10 o'clock, we turn it over to Chuck Kirk. He gets a couple hours. Then we go Dennis Prager for a couple, Seb Gorka till 4, and then Brandon Tatum from 4 to 7 o'clock. And then we go live and local right back here tomorrow at 6 a.m. We are going to be joined by Richard Holtorf. He would like to be the congressional member from the 4th Congressional District. That's where I live. I'm in Douglas County, just not in the studio yet, but someone else is. We're not going to put him on air for obvious FCC compliant reasons, but Stefan Tubbs is in the building. That's its own. And Mark Crowley came by to say security violation. He doesn't have the proper identification, so he just whisked him out of the building. I don't know where this thing goes from here, but there could be some sort of swordplay or police involvement. Don't know yet. Some of the texts that have come in here over our topic, and just to bring you up to speed, it was a conversation that really began with Nikki Haley closing the gap to single digits with Donald Trump in New Hampshire. She's obviously had a surge everywhere, but that's going to be her first, maybe last best momentum builder, is to do super well in New Hampshire. I don't know if she can nip him or not. You know, he's in a courtroom today, I think, over that issue of immunity. But the conversation was about the disparate treatment that they each had and sort of the weirdness with their comments on the Civil War. Nikki Haley, of course, getting punched repeatedly over the idea that when she listed the causes of the Civil War, she gave a short answer that didn't include slavery. And then Trump just sort of doing what he does, which is to just riff off of something I imagine he heard once, I don't know, at a rich person's club, but suggested that somehow we were going to negotiate away the Civil War. What if we could have negotiated away slavery? And it was sort of the disparate treatment. Like he did not get crushed over this in the same way Nikki Haley does. And I wonder if in part it's because we're all just immune to the idea that this guy just says stuff like injecting Clorox into your veins or whatever it is to cure the COVID. And we just kind of shrug and go, you know, he's an idea guy, you know, which makes the Ramaswamy thing seem a little more relevant. But then people have been coming in, and I appreciate this, trying to defend rather than simply say, guy's wrong, don't agree. And I don't think that this is an indication that he harbors some sort of hubris that would cause him to want to just recklessly negotiate away a whole bunch of different geopolitical issues. And then we started talking with our friend Brian from Arvada about Ukraine and all that other stuff. So that's the context in which these texts came in. Someone texted in response to Billy. I think here's Billy responding. There's another one. Yo, Billy, how much of that cash going to Ukraine is actually making it to the fight? How much is ending up in Zelensky's Swiss bank account? Billy says there's been proof of Zelensky skimming money. I think
there's been no proof.
You left the
no
out.
Oh,
of
sorry.
it.
There's been no proof of Zelensky skimming money. And there are things like we had stories about him owning a mansion, and there were things about him owning a yacht. Those were not true. In fact, that yacht story about Zelensky going out and buying the yacht, you could actually do the search yourself, and the company that was selling the yacht, it's still for sale. Again, these are bogus. It's not that difficult to track these things down, people.
It feeds that narrative. Here's something. Did people forget Lincoln said he wasn't going to start a civil war over slavery? He was against it. He wanted to preserve the Union. That's all true. Last didn't Eisenhower warn us against the military-industrial complex? True. I said, so what does that mean? Bye-bye Taiwan, bye-bye Ukraine. We're not going to stand up for any country defending itself from some sort of dictatorial expansionism. And they said, think of a drowning person. Do you make yourself safe first or jump in and kill both because you can't swim or have the wrong tools? I don't see us as someone that doesn't know how to swim, but why don't we get our house in somewhat of an order before we help others? So that's it. We just pull up the bridge, really. And unless somebody puts foot on American soil, we just mind our own business. That feels very turn of the last century kind of a thing. Here's another one. This is both good and bad in the way you guys shift gears on topics. By the time I'm able to comment on an important subject, you guys move on. We haven't moved on. We're just throwing money at Ukraine with absolutely no accountability of how it's being spent. I worry about that. Have heard most of that money is just going into their economy to keep it running, as well as government pension plans. I don't know anything about the pension plan thing. A couple other texts in here. I think, oh, by the way, as I'm sitting here reading your texts, somebody just snuck into the building with the help of Stefan Tubes, who is also here, dressed much like he is when he's at that homeless encampment that you frequent all the time. Listen, it's Richard Holtorf, sir. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for coming out here.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I remember seeing you on the campaign trail. I think
a long time ago. Yeah.
Long time ago. And you were the best candidate for that race.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate
and
that.
I wish that Colorado would have figured that out.
I wish we had too, but here's where we're at. And this kind of brings us to what you're doing. Now, first off, because people know the name, but they may not know the background. They may not know what you're bringing to the table and what you're doing right now under the Gold Dome, which kicks off this week.
Yes, sir.
And what you're going to end up trying to do. So first, tell us a little bit about your background. Where do you hail from? What have you done?
Well, George, I come from Akron, Colorado, Washington County. I'm a third-generation cattle rancher. The brand on our cattle have been on Buffalo Springs Landing Cattle Company since 1892.
Dang.
So you got to understand that our roots run deep.
Yeah.
Something interesting about me, I've only worked for two people in my life. That's Buffalo Springs Ranch in the United States Army.
Right
until
on.
I got into public service, kind of by accident in 2019.
Tell me about the journey with the Army. First off, where'd you go to high school?
Well, I went to Akron High School, home of the Fighting Rams. And if you know anything about Class 1A football, back in the day, Akron Rams used to dominate, won state championship 3 years in a row. I played on that team back in the day, but we didn't win the state championship.
Oh,
we did get into the quarter and semifinals, but we didn't have the horsepower that they had later on in the history of my high school.
So why the Army? What happened? What's the journey there?
Well, I'll tell you, my grandfather served in the Army Air Corps in World War I. My uncle served in World War II, also in the Army Air Corps. My dad served in the Army. So you kind of see a pattern here. He was a corporal.
All the good branch, yeah.
And served during the Korean War era, was drafted. And my brother served in the Army. He was a West Point graduate. And, you know, I was the youngest of three boys. So when your big brother gets into West Point and everyone is really proud of him, I'm like, you know, Daddy was in the Army. My brother's in the Army. I think I might go in the Army too. Now, the irony of that, and I hope my brother's not listening, is at the end of our careers, I retired as an 06 full colonel, and he retired as a lieutenant colonel.
Oh, hello.
So
right there.
Hello, ROTC at CSU, because that's where it all started.
Okay, now, man, listen, pound you for the ROTC thing, but I was an ROTC guy at CU. You know who else I think was up at UNC as ROTC was a guy named George Teal, a commissioner out of Douglas County. I don't know when did you get commissioned?
I got commissioned in 1987 and went right to Fort Rucker to fly helicopters. See, I was the only person in our cadet class that got aviation and active duty. And I was
and by the way, that's a big deal. Folks don't know how competitive that is. Getting, first off, the active duty thing, even in 87, and aviation's pretty elite.
Absolutely. And my professor of military science saw something in me when I went to ROT's advanced camp. I maxed out on the rating, and I wasn't the guy that shined his boots. I wasn't the guy that marched with a straight back and did all the things you were supposed to do. I went to college, studied engineering. It was a hard major. I also was in the Sigma Phi Epsilon fraternity.
It's pronounced hair salon, but go on.
I got you. But anyway, I had a little too much fun some weekends participating in Greek life, and it just all worked out for me. And the legacy of my grandfather and my uncle, who died in World War II, flying P-47 Thunderbolts, by the way.
Wow.
And my aunt coming to my graduation from flight school and giving me my uncle's wings.
Oh, that's a big deal.
It was a big deal for our family. And she came all the way from California to bring those to me, unbeknownst to me. So anyway, that was a big deal in my life. And I've continued to serve for 29 years.
And that, well, you're not now, right? Like, when did you get out? When did you retire?
I retired in 2016, but I signed my ROTC contract August 16th of 1983. And I retired, ironically, September 11th, 2016.
Oh, wow. That's something. And then, listen, at some point, don't you stop flying? I mean, like, when you're in, you reach, I don't know if it's major or lieutenant colonel, but at what point, and I don't know the answer because I'm not an aviation guy, at what point did they say, hey, you shouldn't be flying anymore? You should just be talking to the guys that are flying?
Well, what happens is you start flying a desk. You get out of the cockpit, they push you out. I flew as a lieutenant. And oh, by the way, I did 5 overseas tours. There's no other candidate in this race for CD4 that I'm running for that did 5 overseas tours, that served in 3 theaters, the Pacific Theater, the European Theater, and also in the Middle East, did 2 combat tours in Afghanistan. There's no other candidate that has this resume.
What were you flying?
Well, I started out in Hueys. Then I went to Cobra Gunships.
Sky Pigs. Yeah.
Then I went to Cobra Gunships, and you talk about a sexy airframe. 3 feet wide and all canopy and all gun.
Oh yeah.
And I did that in Korea on the DMZ, Charlie
Yeah.
and Delta sector,
Yeah.
back when I was a lieutenant. Then I came back, and then I got to go to Europe and fly Apaches. And that was an amazing experience. Flying H-64 gunship, arguably the best gunship in the world still today. When you can reach out and touch things at 8+ miles within a 3 square foot
Accurate. Yeah.
accuracy when you're bore sighted. And I was also an armament officer, and I was also a maintenance test pilot. Most people don't know I went to test pilot school, and I was a 15 Bravo. I was a 15 Bravo. I was also a 15 Delta 30, which means I was an aviation maintenance test pilot. And that's what got me pulled back into active duty the second time. When I was ranching with Daddy after I did my first tour, I was living life. I was flying out of Buckley in the Guard. I was in wiggling sticks out there, 1 weekend a month and a couple flight training periods a month and living life. And all of a sudden 9/11 hit, and that changed everybody's life.
Of course.
And I got recalled to active duty. And I went to Korea for 3 years. Then I went to 10th Mountain Division, became their chief of aviation on division staff. That's a big deal. And then I went to Afghanistan and deployed with the division.
Where were you guys in Afghanistan?
Well, I started out in RC East at Bagram with the RC East headquarters. 10th Mountain Division took that command. But then, according to my chief of staff, because of my maturity, experience, and leadership, they needed a military advisor down south to help the ANAs. So I got sent to Task Force Phoenix, and I went down to Kandahar and then to Helmand to advise an Afghan battalion. And that's probably arguably the hardest job I've ever had in my life.
Wow, that's interesting.
And fortunately, I cheated death 4 times. And got out of there and got home. But that was a tough job.
Did you have the opportunity to do War College? Were they dangling out a star for you to be like, hey, man, why don't you go here, do this, and we'll think about other stuff?
Yes, I did. I actually graduated from the U.S. Army War College in 2013. And that's really hard to do. And number one, to get accepted in the U.S. Army War College.
Yeah, it is.
And then
to be selected to compete to go is its own thing, right?
Yes,
to get to go.
Yes, sir. So that was a privilege of mine. And I'm the only candidate, by the way, that has a master's degree in strategic studies from the U.S. Army War College. I got one
of those.
Well, good for you. Congratulations. You're a stud.
No, I don't know.
No.
Clearly not. But I got one of those things. It's hard to know how to use it. Like, if you apply and say, I have an MBA or I have a master's in engineering or something, people are like, oh, but you say, I have a master's degree in strategic studies. They're like, what the hell is that? And I know what that is.
Let me tell you how we're using it in the Republican Party, because I'm the House whip right now.
What's the whip come from? What does that term come from? Do you know?
Well, the whip is the one that whips up the votes and gets the caucus in line and tries to get things pointed in the right direction. So we are a unified body as we work and navigate. And we're a super minority in the state house.
Yes.
When I stumbled into politics in 2019 and showed up in 2020, George, here's the thing that I noticed. Colorado Republicans had a huge vacuum of leadership. We were confused. We were lost. We were misguided. And I don't know what happened over those years. I don't want to pick on anybody, but we lacked leadership. And there was a lot of allegedly good people that were supposed to be in those positions. When I got there, I said, number one, we have to unify. We have to be a united party somehow. Ronald Reagan said we have to have a big tent, and right now we're fractured. We have to quit thinking about ourselves. We have to quit thinking about, people want to profiteer off of politics. I said, this is selfless service is something larger than yourself. And if it's about you, you're dead wrong and need to get out of the business, because it's about people over policy and people over politics. And that's how I was raised, because my mother was very politically active back in Washington County. She worked on all kinds of campaigns, from Hank Brown to Wayne Allard to Bill Armstrong. And I was a little kid that rode around in the car and handed out these flyers, So me and my brothers, when Mama could get us off the ranch and the farm and break away from the things that we love to do, we'd go to town, all kinds of towns, Sterling, Brush, Fort Morgan, Akron. And we do this thing called door knocking and handing out flyers and promoting these candidates. And one of the things that impresses me, I remember Bill Armstrong, one of the best federal level legislators we've ever had.
Kind of the godfather of conservatism out here.
Just a champion. So why did we lose our way and forget about him? I don't know. But anyway, we've been around politics in a long time. I served on the Washington County Republican Central Committee for a term, and really just stayed at the local level. But now at the state level, I bring that strategic leadership. I try to unify. I reach out to Dave Williams and I say, Dave, you're pointing in the wrong direction. Turn your guns outside the perimeter.
Yeah,
okay?
amen.
We don't do that. When I was in Helmand and we were under fire and we were surrounded by the enemy, we didn't turn our guns internally. We remembered who the enemy is. And for Colorado, we know the progressive left. Not all Democrats. There's moderate Democrats. And I tell people this story. You know, my wife, my dear, sweet, beautiful wife, who I met while I was in the military, and I married up, brother. I married up 100%.
It's a good sign. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Most of her family are from North Carolina, and they're Democrats. They're Blue Dog Democrats. And when we would go back to those family reunions back in East Bend and spend time with their family, 7 out of 10 things we would agree on. Those 3 out of 10, we had enough whiskey and beer to fix. We could take care of that. But now with the progressive left so far over here trying to drive off that California cliff, there's not enough whiskey in Tennessee, and there's not enough beer in the Coors plant in Golden, Colorado to fix these problems. And that's one of the things that I've said I'm stepping up to. And we're pushing back. And I have for the last 4 years.
We're talking with Richard Holtorf. He is a House Representatives member, part of the 300, or they're actually only 19, but it feels like you guys are part of the Spartan 300. They're standing in the hot gates.
Do you know who made that moniker?
No.
You're looking at him.
Oh, that's it right there.
Right here, the whip.
Right there. Fantastic. By the way, that whip, this is a complete aside. Heard this thing once where someone said, where does the term whip come from? And it's an old English hunting term where the dogs on the outside that are designed and trained to focus all of the other hunting dogs to move forward, to not get distracted and run off to the bushes and chase every other thing. They're called the whippers in. And that's where the whip comes from, is it's this old hunting term where they try to keep everybody focused on getting the thing in front of them instead of getting distracted. I thought it was brilliant. Anyway, you have, and I want to do this. I want to cut away for a break and come back, but you have made the reckless, perhaps intoxicated decision to run for federal office. And I want to talk about that when we come back, because that field is only getting bigger and crazier, it seems like, by the moment. It's just a matter of time before Stephen Tubbs announces he's running. And I don't know. I don't even know if he lives in the 4th. I don't know that it matters.
Oh, you don't have to live in the 4th now, because you can live in the 3rd and just jump right. You can carpet bag right into CD4, my friend.
Folks, we're going to do 2 things here when we come back. We're going to launch the campaign, Stephen Tubbs for CD fill in the blank. It could be anything at this point, anywhere. I think he's jumping into the 5th. What's that? Oh, yeah. Billy's trying to focus. Billy's my whip on the show to make sure that I don't lose sight of the fact that I'm obligated to do a couple things that are pretty awesome. One is to talk about a superstar conservative out there, a guy named Daniel J. Kaplis. The J is for justice. It's actually not. It's for Joe, which was the name of his awesome father, who was a career police officer out there in Chicago. And I tell you that only because if you want to know why this guy is built the way he is, it's because he grew up in a household that believed in right and wrong. It believed in good and evil, and it believed in justice. And that's what this guy was raised to believe. And so when he ends up taking his Evans scholarship up there to CU Boulder, go Buffs. Not the Rams, go Buffs. I'm just saying.
I'll bite my tongue, sir.
Looking at Colonel. Well, if you don't, who will? Stephen, I just want to say that this is a guy who, when you give him a call, his focus isn't on how do I make money on this case, or is this case what? All this guy cares about, along with his partner, Boebert Wahid, all they care about is this a righteous case? Is there an opportunity here to bring justice to a situation where this person can't do it on their own? If that's the kind of attorney you want when you've been hurt by someone else's negligence, recklessness, sometimes intentional conduct, then you got to give Dan a call at 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551, or check him out at dankapleslaw.com. dankapleslaw.com. When we come back, we'll be joined again by Colonel retired Holtorf, also candidate for CD. It's a big reveal. He may be running for more than one office. We don't know yet. We'll find out when we come back, along with Stephen Tubbs. It's George Brauchler on the George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS, in studio with Richard Holtorf. He is a state representative out of Washington County. He's about to get into the General Assembly here as you guys get underway. I think it's probably Thursday, isn't that right?
That's going to be Wednesday. We gavel
Wednesday,
in at
that's tomorrow.
10 a.m. on Wednesday. And that's when the wild ride is going to begin. I was told that this session is going to be wackier than last session and even wackier than the special session.
What's bizarre about that is it's an election year. And historically, you would say, okay, in an election year, we would see them take a bit of a knee on the zaniness, but maybe it's a product of the fact that Trump isn't competitive here, at least not at the moment. There is no other statewide race. It's all House of Representatives, Commissioner, DA, and Congress, which is one of the reasons we wanted to have you in here, because in addition to taking on your duties as a member of the General Assembly in what is going to be this wacky session, you've also made the bonkers decision to throw your hat in the ring, along with, I believe, 53 other people who would like to be Ken Buck's replacement in CD4. Tell me about that decision that you made and why are you doing this?
So, George, it was back in August, September, and I'm listening to the news. And Ken Buck, I'm going to say past tense, was my congressman until he made about 20 fatal mistakes. But what really upset me was his decision not to vote to impeach Mayorkas on the border. The border crisis is the biggest problem we have right now. And we've got to stop the flood of illegal aliens. And when Ken Buck says no to Mayorkas because he's got to go, that's a judgment call. That's a failed judgment call. When Ken Buck protects the Biden money machine and says no to the inquiry against the Biden family because there's nothing else here, and tells the Oversight Committee, no, I'm not going to support that, Ken Buck's got to go. When I walk into my house and I watch Newsmax, Fox News, and I'm a red-blooded American patriot, gun-toting, beer-drinking American. And
Hopefully
I see,
not at the same time, but go on.
Well, yeah. Right. And I turn the TV on, and I do watch MSNBC and CNN just to see what the other side's doing. And I see Ken Buck on CNN throwing softballs at arguably the most radical, liberal news outlet in the country. I'm like, Ken, what in the bleep are you doing? Now you got to go. George, I was the only legitimate candidate who in September said, Ken, I'm coming after you.
So had you announced then, and forgive me for not knowing this, but had you announced?
I started an exploratory committee, and I said, Ken, I'm coming after you. I'm starting this committee, and I'm going to help you pack your suitcase. I said, Ken, call me. You can go back and check the records. National news media, The Hill. I was on radio here in Colorado, and I said, Ken, you've lost your way. For a guy that wrote the book, Drain the Swamp, you are now part of the swamp, and I'm going to help you pack your suitcase. So that's when the process started, and that's when I made that decision. One more thing, though.
Yeah.
Every person that's in the race right now, with a few exceptions, and there are no names, they sit on the sidelines. They sit there and wait to get a signal from the bench to come in. I'm not going to name all the names, but there's a litany of them. I was the one that said, you know what? We've had enough, CD4. You don't represent our district, and this cowboy's coming in to help run you out of town.
Have you had the chance to talk with Ken about that? And I say that only from the context of, my guess is he's been in this jurisdiction as long as he's been in Congress, you've been in this jurisdiction as well. Have you had the opportunity to say, hey, dude, what the hell? Like, what's going on? You were my guy.
Well, I'll tell you, and I'll show you right here. Take a look.
Yep.
I have him on my phone.
You do.
That's his personal cell phone.
Yep.
Okay. And he used to take my calls.
Yeah.
But you know what? I said, Ken, we need to talk.
Yeah.
Call me.
Yeah.
Or I'll call you.
Yeah. Yeah.
He won't take my calls anymore because you've lost your way. Now, Ken doesn't want to talk to me. He should have talked to me about 6 or 8 months ago. I'm a state representative. I'm the whip. He knows I'm a leader in Colorado, and you ought to be, as a federal level delegate, connected to your leadership in Colorado.
Yeah.
That's another failure in Colorado. Why are we not more connected? Federal legislators and representatives at the federal level coming down and empowering our local state level.
Do you see that on the other side? Do you see like the, as Peter calls her, the heroin Barbies and the others working better with their Democrat leadership than we do with?
They absolutely crosstalk. They're connected. And I'll use a military term. Their communications are completely nested and synchronized, where we are fragmented and confused. And the problem is you have to show Colorado, the Colorado Republicans and their message. Number one is coordinated. Number one, we're all together. Number two, by the way, I'm going to count a little
They're
better.
just numbers. They're just
need another cup of coffee.
Yeah.
But we have to work together and synchronize our efforts and not be disconnected. And that takes time and effort. And we need to do better at that. And it can't be where the party is fighting amongst itself. We're trying to have this purity test where if you're not far enough to the right and you don't wash red enough, you're not a dark enough color of red, that you're not part of us. We have to change that and unify. So the people of Colorado, the unaffiliated, those young people that are trying to figure out what they want to be and what they want to be when they grow up can look up and say, that's what I want to do. That's who I want to be. I want to connect myself. I want to hitch my horse to the Republican wagon because they support my principles.
Let's talk about the race as it's developing now, because it has, my God, it's changed. I mean, you're right. Everybody and their mother, upon Ken's announcement, kind of jumped in, parachuted into the race. And without comment on them, that all got upended, a week or so ago, when Congresswoman Boebert from the 3rd Congressional District said, I think I'm going to run here in the 4th. Talk about your reaction to that. Talk about what's going on with the race right now. How do you size this thing up?
Well, I'll tell you and all your listeners, go to holtorf4colorado.com, Holtorf, FOR Colorado.com, and you can see this public statement I made. Right away, within 24 hours of her announcing, I was the only candidate that came out with a strong message. Now, we learned in American government class back in when I went to CSU, by the way, go Rams.
Is it accredited yet? I know that they're working on it. Billy was going to research that.
I can't touch
my
that.
son goes there, so I really have to temper my criticism because he loves it. He's doing great. And when I'm up there, it's kind of cool. So anyway,
so to get back to my point, we learned what a carpetbagger was.
Yeah.
And Lauren Boebert is nothing but a carpetbagger. She's taken her carpet and she's trying to come from the western slope, 25 plus counties, to come to the eastern slope, 21 counties. Lauren Boebert is not qualified to represent CD4. She doesn't know the counties. She doesn't even know the county seats. I represented and still represent in the state house. I've represented 16 counties of the 21 counties in this congressional district. When I represented House District 64, 9 counties in Southeast Colorado, and now I represent 7 counties in Northeast Colorado. I'm connected with those communities. Here's where I need to reach out.
Hold on. Do you have Lincoln and Elbert in there?
Absolutely.
Okay. Just wanted to check.
Absolutely. And Elbert County is a great place. Hey, I'm going to shout out to Tom Peterson down there.
Tom's a good man.
He's an amazing
also,
man.
Superstar daughter, by the way. I think she's recently engaged, but Chloe's fantastic. But Elbert and Lincoln, the reason I ask is that was part of my jurisdiction when I was the district attorney. And I can tell you that is still America. No knock on Douglas or Arapahoe counties. That's still America. When you get in there, you're like, oh, yeah.
This is what it's supposed to be like.
Right.
So anyway, I will tell you the one counties that don't really know me, but they need to know me, because Holtorf for Congress has a lot of layers. Is Douglas County, Larimer County, Arapahoe and Adams.
Big ones.
They're big ones, but they don't know Holtorf for Congress, but they need to know. I got a lot of layers, and I'm going to tell you a few things. Now, let's talk about Boebert a little bit more. Okay. She is desperately trying to jump to the other side of the state because she can't stand the heat in the kitchen. Look, you're a military man. I'm a military man. When you have a fight, you stand and fight. You fight. What was it? Davy Crockett in the Alamo. You stand and fight. And if you've got 15 or 20 of them laying around you, then
Billy chimes in with, how did that work out?
Well, I'll tell you what, for American history, it worked out great because it showed the tenacity and toughness of Americans who stand and fight and never yield. Well, you know what, Lauren Boebert, I hope your people are listening, because in the military, they call that desertion. You know what the penalty for desertion is, my friend? I'll let you answer that.
I do know. It's not a good one. It's the ultimate. Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to announce it on the radio, but the last time they did it was in World War II in 1940. And that poor private who ran from the field of battle.
They made a movie with
it's really sad.
Charlie Sheen, I think, was in it.
Ran from battle, and he was put to death. And you know what? That's what the penalty is for desertion.
Yeah.
You don't desert from a fight,
But
Lauren Boebert. You just don't
You're
run.
talking about it in grave terms, but you're not suggesting, of course, any harm.
No,
what you're
no,
talking
no.
about is if there's a principle there of when it gets hard, you stick it out. That's what you're talking about. Is look, difficult fight, have at it, but don't leave the fight.
Yeah, don't yield. Don't run from a fight. Stand and fight when you have to fight. You know that. When
Yep.
I served in Afghanistan, did we run from fights? No. We stood and fought. And in almost every battle, in almost every case, we could beat the Taliban hands down. The one thing that was frustrating is our hands were tied. So we couldn't do it like we did it in World
Right.
War II and really take care of business.
We've kind of seen that since World War II. Almost everywhere we've gone, it's been the politicians who have said, we want you to fight real hard, but not that hard. Let me ask you two things I want you to talk about. One is, where do you substantively disagree with Boebert on any of the positions? Because I think people, I don't know, that's separate from this issue. But two, here's what she's bringing to this race, man. Incredible name ID. That's undeniable. She brings $1.5 million over from CD3. You're taking on this. You've got the three smooth stones, man, in the sling. You're taking on the Goliath of this CD4 race. How do you do it?
Well, I will tell you, everyone has asked me that question. And it's a tough race. And I'm not going to cut and run. I tell people I'm in it to win it. She can bring her millions. I've raised over six figures right now. And for the record, and you can go look it up, I started raising money December 6th. And I raised in less than 30 days over $100,000. And I'm going to continue to raise money. I'm never going to get to the 1.4 and 1.5 or whatever that number is. But you know what? You don't buy a race. The people of Colorado are smarter than that. You shouldn't buy a race. I'm going to win this race by wearing out the bottom of my boots, by getting out there and meeting the people and know that I am the person that won't forget them when I go to Washington, D.C. I talked to a person from Colorado Springs that said, we wanted Boebert to come see us. We called her, we asked her, we invited her, and she wouldn't come see us. What kind of a congresswoman doesn't go out and reach out to everybody even in your district or outside of your district that wants to talk to you? I answer my phone. Oh, by the way, how many candidates will tell you their phone number is 970-520-0010? Write that down, people. Call me anytime. It's on my website. It's in my email, and I'll talk to you.
Holtorf for Congress.
Yeah.
Or
Holtorf for Colorado.
Sorry. Holtorforcolorado.com. That's right. Holtorf for Colorado. I'm writing it down right now. Oh, Lord. There's two F's in there, by the way. Actually, you know what? If you put it all together, there's two F's right next to each other. Holtorf for Colorado.com.
Thank you. Thank you very much. There's 20 things I can talk about, Boebert. Number one, we were in Springfield. We were having a debate. She starts talking about timber, runoff, the Colorado River.
Yeah.
And for us in Eastern Colorado, and Lauren Boebert, have your staff and your speechwriters pay close attention. The Colorado River is not one of the river basins in Eastern Colorado. We have the Platte, we have the Republic, we have the Arkansas, we have the Cimarron. You don't know the district, ma'am, and you have no business representing it. Number one. Number two, bring all the money you want to town. I think the Colorado electorate are smarter than that. Okay. Now, there is this little Boebert wow factor, but that Boebert wow factor is getting her in a lot of trouble. Okay. I raised 5 daughters. George.
Wow.
5 daughters.
Whoa.
And I tell you what, if my daughters would have done anything that she's done, we'd be having a serious talk about what it is to set yourself to higher standards in public. She wants to be a congresswoman. Well, George, I will tell you, she needs to really take a good hard look in the mirror. And the thing she just this weekend, what are you doing, ma'am?
One of the
you need
things
to find yourself.
That was aside to that whole thing that was revealing, and I think nobody was more disappointed to learn this than Stefan, was what they can see in the dark. When you go to the DCPA and you see that they have those NVGs, they got like NVG cameras in there. It's like, oh my sweet goodness. But let me ask you about this part too. And I'm a big fan of the idea that the next person you meet someone from your jurisdiction shouldn't always be the first time you meet them from your jurisdiction. And you're talking about, hey, I've been on the Eastern Plains here for my whole life. I have represented these counties. When I'm going to these events, whether it's a Lincoln Day dinner or a debate, I'm not meeting people for the first time. I'm seeing them again, right? Like, hey, good to see you, Steve. Good to see you, Judy, that kind of thing. That's a big deal. I think that matters. But when you talk about mounting this kind of a campaign and it feels like this is true everywhere, name ID seems to drive so much of the narrative and so much of the fundraising and all the polling and all this other stuff. My guess is you got to win this thing at the assembly. You got to get on the, I'm guessing, you got to go through the assembly, and your goal is to try to win over as many people through touches that don't come from millions of dollars of advertising, but through legitimate in-person touches. How are you going to do that, man? That's a giant jurisdiction. It's got to be, what's bigger, 4th or 3rd CD?
3rd is bigger, 25 counties, but not by much. 4th is the next largest congressional district. It's 21 counties. But let me tell you how to do it.
Yeah, how do you
I'm going to tell you how to do it. Okay, you buy a Chevy Silverado with 13,000 miles on it, and then you put 130,000 miles on it. That's what I have right now on my pickup. I plan on putting 50 or 60,000 miles on my pickup between now and June 25th, when the primary. I'm going to reach people, touch people. You know, does Lauren Boebert know where Simla, Colorado is? Well, I was at a meet and greet in Simla, in Simla on Sunday. 25 good-hearted American people. Don Bailey down there's got the most beautiful saddle museum and Western museum. Nobody even knows this thing is there. It's beautiful. It's got decades, near centuries of history. And I don't want Don Bailey now to be flooded by a bunch of people. But we had a meet and greet down there.
Yeah.
And Lauren Boebert has no idea where Simla is.
Now, look, this
no
is,
clue.
This is going a little bit back in time here, but when I was the DA, and because Simla was part of my jurisdiction, I went out to Simla, and I remember getting gas and standing there for a really long period of time at the gas pump, trying to figure out where to put my credit card. And the nice lady behind me from the window goes, hey, honey, it's over here. And it was one of those little kinds, you know, the kind where you slide it across with the carbon.
And you got to have, an embossed raised numbers on there.
That's right. That's exactly right. You can't have one of these fancy ones. And I was like, what? Where am I? And but it was just America, man. I don't know how else to describe it. You could have seen Andy Griffith walking around the corner.
I'm telling you, if I was on the immigrant wagon trains coming this way to resettle the Western United States in my wagon, I would have stopped in Simla and said, this is where I want to punch cattle. This is it. You got a beautiful valley, the Kiowa River. Oh, by the way, Boebert doesn't even know that.
Beautiful area.
And that goes, and you see Pikes Peak to the west, right down the valley. Oh, my goodness. And all the grass in the world. I mean, it's heaven down there.
There's no Best Buy there.
There is not. There's no big box store there.
No, there is not a single big box store there at all. In fact, I recall driving down there once, and the hardball road just ended. It was just like, that's it. You're on gravel for a bit. Good luck. You know, I'm like, holy crap. It was a good thing it was the DA car. Let's do this. Let's cut away for a break. I got to do a live read here, and then we'll come back and we'll wrap up the conversation with it. I do want to talk about a little bit too, like, day one, Congressman Holtorf, what is it you're focused on? Like, you have an idea in your head, like, these are my top bills. This is the thing I want to tackle. I want to do that when we come back. Can we do that?
Yes,
Won't
sir.
have a ton of time, but we'll do it. Hey, listen, before I cut away for a break, I want to tell you about our friends at QC Kinetics. These are the folks that are figuring out a way to make your life better by improving you. They do it through the least invasive way possible. Now, listen, you can go see a doctor and say, I have this chronic pain, and they can say, suck it up. They can say, here, take a whole bunch of pain pills, or they're going to refer you to some jock of medicine called an orthopedic surgeon. And I'm telling you, man, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. These guys will find a good reason to cut open you and try to fix you. Don't go through any of those. Instead, figure out a way to get to QC Kinetics. These are the folks that will use regenerative medicine that's putting a needle in you, taking out the good parts and putting it into the parts that need help. And all of a sudden you're feeling a ton better. You walk out same day treatment. You start being healed the next day. No drugs, no surgery, no downtime. Get your life back. 303-900-8986, 303-900-8986, or check them out at QC, those are letters, QCkinetics.com. When we come back, we'll wrap up the hour with Representative Holtorf and me, George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Say goodbye to clutter and hello to convenience when you experience organization transformation in your home. Roll them out shelves. Your clutter transformation experts create affordable Colorado-crafted organized storage solutions. These custom options will maximize and organize your kitchen and bath storage as Roll them out shelves carefully designs and builds roll-out drawers to fit your space perfectly. To clear the clutter, contact owners Joyce and Brent at Roll them out Shelves to schedule your free in-home estimate today.
Hey, it's George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Final segment with our in-studio guest. His name is Richard Holtorf. He's a state house representative from the northeast part of Colorado. He is running for the 4th Congressional District. I teased folks by saying, before we cut you loose, and folks, by the way, you can find out a lot of this stuff if you just go to holtorfforcolorado.com. Holtorf has one F in it, but if you throw the 4 in there, it's 2 right next to each other. Holtorf for Colorado. Actually, if you put the 2 F's in it, it's Holtorf or Colorado. Either way, it all spends the same when you go to the website. I teased folks by saying I wanted to ask you, what's the plan, man? You win this thing. What does day one look like? For presumably, hopefully, we're still in the majority in the House. What do you do?
Well, I will tell you that when I become the next congressman for CD4, I'm going to go back to Washington. The first thing we're going to do is focus on the border and the drug flow. We have families that are losing their kids to fentanyl. If you're a mother and you have a teenage son that is struggling with drug dependency and he or she can't find their way, the last thing you need is for poisonous fentanyl to kill them and you have to bury your child. There is nothing more painful for a parent. I haven't had to do it. I know friends of mine that have. So I will tell you the first thing we're going to do is address that border and the drug cartels that are literally laughing at us right now as they peddle their poison. If we have to activate the National Guard of multiple states along the border, if we have to federalize our troops, if we have to federalize reserve forces, we're going to bring those forces forward and we're going to protect our border and we're going to interdict because we can do it. I served in Afghanistan down on the southern border. We can interdict these cartels and stop this drug flow with the military capabilities we have, responsibly, carefully, and surgically. That needs to stop. The next thing is this debt crisis is out of control. We've got to turn our spending around, the entitlement spending, and I'm going to work tirelessly to change that trajectory because your kids and grandkids, and I have 2 grandkids, how can they carry over $101,000 worth of debt before they ever get out of high school? How do they carry that into the future?
It'll be forgiven by the Biden administration.
Well, Biden, because it's magic money or monopoly money. It doesn't matter.
Disappears. You don't have the debt.
Now, what about the dangerous international crisis? We have 2 wars going on right now. There's nobody in this race that understands foreign policy, that understands how dangerous the world is, because I've been around the world. I've been in the Middle East. I've been in the Pacific. I know. I've been to China, for crying out loud. I know the danger of North Korea. I understand the danger of radical fundamental Islamism and what that means and what the cure is for that. And it's a strong military. I went to the War College and it was peace through strength was the motto. Number 1, you have to be strong. Number 2, you have to show that you have that strength. Talking about it isn't enough. Well, I will bring that leadership. And I'll also bring a senior level military leadership to Washington, D.C., where I think we lack it. Look what Matt Gaetz did when they rolled McCarthy. At probably arguably the worst time in the world because he didn't understand strategically the implications. Whether McCarthy needed
caught the car and didn't know what to do after he caught the car. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Arguably, McCarthy was a rhino. He was going to the Biden administration and actually begging for concessions. You don't give that away. That kind of leadership is what I bring, sir. And thank you for inviting me to your program.
Richard Holtorf, you can find him at holtorfforcolorado.com. This is going to be a hell of a race. We're going to stay tuned. We'll have Richard back on here. Good luck under the gold dome, sir. Hey, listen, stick around. We got one more hour. Love to hear from you at 303-696-1971. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. Bam. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. My thanks to Representative Richard Holtorf. He was in studio with us the last hour, almost of it. He was a couple minutes behind. He is a candidate for CD4. That is one of the hotly contested seats that's out there. In terms of other candidates, listen, I'd love to have folks on. I can't promise you we're all going to do this, with everybody in studio and all that, but I want people who listen to the show and people that listen to the podcast, and there's jillions of them too, to have access to these kinds of interviews, because I want them to know who they're voting for. This decision, and let's be clear, I'll have the Democrat on just really for purposes of having the conversation. The Democrat is not going to win CD4. That's not going to happen. The Democrat is not going to win CD5. So I'll have folks on to have the conversation because I want you to be able to hear from them and then make a better and informed decision. I also think it's telling about the health of the Republican Party who jumps into some of these bigger races. And so I had mentioned this in the 6 o'clock hour yesterday. I had said, hey, Wayne Williams running for CD5 and all this other stuff. Wayne quickly corrected me and said, no, I'm at an exploratory stage right now, which is great. But there's going to be a bunch of people that jump in right now. It's Dave Williams, who is the state party chair. We did that conversation yesterday, and I'm sure we'll have more as we move forward. But for CD4, there's like 10 people in this race or something like that. And off air, he was reminding me some of the big names that are seeking this seat, in addition to his own. And of course, Deb Flora, who you've heard of if you listen to this station. Of course, Lauren Boebert. But you've got guys like Jerry Sonnenberg, who longtime state senator up there in the Northeast, also a rancher. Jerry's completely legit. And then a guy named Mike Lynch, who we've had on the radio a billion times too. Mike is the minority leader for the state house for Republicans in the General Assembly. These are all big time folks that are doing big time things right now during this session that kicks off tomorrow, as well as running for CD4. I just don't know what that says about the party. I mean, we have good folks that are running, but they all want to leave their current jobs. I mean, one of the ones that I had sort of thought might jump into CD5, but she chose not to. And I think it was smart given life stuff, is Rose Puglisi. And what I mean by that is Rose would be a fantastic member of Congress. She's a fantastic member of the General Assembly. 2 small kids. I mean, this is the same thing that I'm sure Christy Burton Brown went through too. It's the same thing I went through. And that is, listen, you're not running for a job where you get to see your kids every night. You're running for a job where either you rip them out of their lives to take them to the swamp, or you just decide you're not going to see them for 3 or 4 or more days during a week. I'm not ready to do that. I don't think Rose is, and I know KBB wasn't either. So these are all interesting developments that are taking place. But I'm anxious to kind of get feedback from you about what you heard at 303-696-1971. Some of the texts that have come in here, some of these are to Tubbs, and they're taking shots at him because the Raiders own the San Diego Chargers. I would feel better about sharing that message if it wasn't for the fact that the Raiders also own the Broncos this season, and that hits close to home. Our friend Alexa, the DA car, was it a Jag or a Bentley? Just realized there's a Bentley dealership off of County Line and Low Tree. No, the DA car, great story, by the way, but I'm happy to answer that since it came up. There is a car that taxpayers pay for through the county when you're the DA of the 18th Judicial District. When I was elected back in 2012, which used to seem like a couple years ago, but my God, it's now a long, long time ago. 11 years ago now, before I was elected, I got sworn in. Oh, goodness gracious. 11 years ago this week, I think, or last week. There was a car that they were like, hey, you get this DA car. What do you want with it? I said, I just want bare bones. I don't want anything special at all. I just want the run of the mill thing. They're like, hey, we can get that. And you are always going to get used. We can get this used Ford, whatever it is. I got to be American made too. Get this used Ford, whatever it is. And it's got a sunroof, and I'm going to stop. No sunroof. I want a bare bones car, because if I ever run into a taxpayer on the street or they see me getting into a car, I never want them to have, and I know it's tongue in cheek with Alexa, but this reaction like, dang, that's the, so we got a bare bones Chevy Traverse, cloth seats. I think the coolest feature it had while it worked, and it stopped working, was the remote ignition. Like you could press on if you were close enough, you could press on the little fob and it would start up the car. That was probably the coolest feature, especially in the winter. Otherwise, it didn't have any of the bells and whistles. Might have had electric windows. I don't know if it was the roll down ones, but that's the car I ended up having. And when they were ready to kill this thing at over 100,000 miles, I would guess the county started saying, hey, we're done servicing this thing. We want to go sell it at auction. I reached out and said, whatever you think you'd get for it at auction, let me buy it from you guys for that amount of money. So they went and did their little blue book voodoo thing, came back with a price. I didn't haggle with them. I just wrote the check and took it, and then promptly put on another 100,000+ miles on that vehicle. That was great. But that's the answer to that right here. Here's some other texts that are coming in. Oh man, Billy's still responding to some of this stuff. This is about Trump. Thanks, Billy. Billy, it's hard for me to track this right here. There's both good and bad in the way.
Sorry, we're talking Putin and Russia and Ukraine.
Oh, this is what you're doing while I'm interviewing. Yeah. Here's one. Does he support the legalization of marijuana at the federal level? Yes or no? Such a fair question, texter. I should have asked him that, and I'm not going to give the answer for him, but I'll say based on my conversation with him both on and off air, I don't think so. This is not a safe injection site guy. Let alone, but the legalization piece, I'd be interested to ask him that question. But I know he's a guy who has lost someone close to him in his life to drugs. Marijuana was part of that path that they were on. I just don't know that he would be down with legalizing that, but we'll ask. Is it possible to introduce 5 bills that will repeal some of the garbage the residents of Colorado have been saddled with in their last few communist legislative sessions? This would clearly be a question for the whip, Richard Holtorf. The short answer is yes, you could introduce those 5 bills, but to repeal anything that the lefties have done under the Gold Dome or at the ballot, the answer would be no. It would die in probably Veterans Affairs or whatever that kill committee is for the House. It wouldn't pass. It seems to me more and more our path to trying to right the ship is going to be through the petition ballot process, right? Through that ballot access matters. And by the way, you should know the party in power, the lefties, hate that process. They hate it because it's an end run around them and they're just so smart and we're just not so smart. And so they hate things like that. Remember Tabor wasn't from the legislature. We did that. We did that for us. HH was their effort to put something on the ballot because they had to, because of Tabor, and we crushed it. And what that tells me is, as a state, we're not nearly as blue as our representatives. We're probably blue. I don't really have a lot of doubt about that, given the demographic changes that have taken place since we legalized marijuana. But I don't think we're nearly as blue as our representatives under the Gold Dome and in our state legislative, in our state representative offices. So we need to get to the ballot. I don't think that there's anything, and I should have asked him this, but I wasn't really focused on this next legislative session. My guess is he's going to echo what Representative Lynch says, what Majority Leader Lynch or Minority Leader Lynch says, and that is we're not in a position to do much other than play defense. We just don't have enough troops to play offense on this particular, on any of these issues under the Gold Dome. Let's see what else. There's some of these others here. Someone a huge fan, someone not a huge fan. Here's one. I want to vote for Richard. I live in CD6. It's not going to be a problem, right? Sadly, yes, because your choices are Jason Crow and I don't know who else. Here's some more stuff with Billy. Another Alexa Aircraft Spruce has a good, nope, that's an old one. Takes a little training, positive. Nope, that's a good one. Gotta he Richard to say bovine fecal excrement. Jason saying gotta get Richard to say bovine fecal excrement, which I think is, of course, our prettied up word for BS. In politics, this is another reference to our talk about Trump. In politics, it's called diplomacy, and in business, it's called negotiation. I just don't think so. Jefferson Davis would have been scared of Trump. He would have released all the slaves by day one. Pretty sure that's sarcastic. Trump idea of negotiating the Civil War is his narcissistic personality thinking of the accords he would, I think what you mean is accolades he would receive. He's killing the party and needs to go. He may be a Democratic agent. I don't think he's a Democratic agent. Here's another one. Hey, George, speaking of running, are you? I hear you're running. Nope, no announcements to be made there. One other thing I wanted to update you on, because I've been reading this opinion throughout the morning, is you'll recall that Tina Peters, who was the clerk and recorder for Mesa County, she was indicted of, I don't know the exact number of charges. I want to say 13 charges, including attempt to influence and all this other stuff. She was indicted by the Republican District Attorney Dan Rubenstein out there in Mesa County. She filed a lawsuit with the federal court seeking to have that further prosecution and investigation upended, claiming that it was, amongst other things, that it was a violation of her First Amendment rights and all this other stuff. She asked to have a dismissal of those charges by the federal government. There's a judge out there who just issued an opinion. Her name is Nina Y. Wang. She is a Biden appointee from January-ish of 2022, U.S. District Court judge. And she issued a 20-page order denying that motion to dismiss. And I got to say, having gone through it, pretty detailed. Two takeaways. One, there is an exception to a rule out there. There are several exceptions to a rule that says the federal government ought not intervene in state business where it can avoid it, right? And there's only a certain number of exceptions, and the judge goes through a lot of details to say none of these exceptions apply here. The other takeaway, though, is there is some question mark out there about to the applicability of some of this stuff to the federal government, and I could see that being a source of an appeal. I presume Peter's team will appeal this decision. I don't know that it gets anywhere, but you can tell there's just enough gray area in one portion of this opinion about federal government jurisdiction and intervention that it might make a difference. But I think that because Judge Wang went through the detailed analysis of why, I'm going to call this a Younger exception, because Younger is the name of the case, that because none of them seem to fit, that's it. And I mean, I can just tell you this thing ends with having found that all three factors of Younger abstention, that means to abstain from intervening, have been met and no exceptions apply. Abstention by this court with respect to the claims against defendant Rubenstein is mandatory. So she's not ruling on the merits of the claim. She's not saying that there isn't maybe potentially something down the road. What she's saying is there's been nothing presented to me that qualifies for any of the exceptions for the federal government to not abstain from letting District Attorney Rubenstein continue to prosecute this case in the manner in which it's being prosecuted. And that's it. So it's mandatory. The federal government, once she makes those rulings, that there's just no role that they can play. So that's it. So there's going to be a trial now. Tina Peters is going to go to trial on these 13 charges. I think the question here, and I'd love to follow this again. Billy, maybe this is another chance for us to exercise our Open Records Act powers now that you have the skill set. But it's in February, I think. I'd love to get some sound from that trial, specifically the opening statements. Like, we know what Dan's going to say. We already have an idea. I really want to know what Tina Peters' attorneys are going to say about this. And also the outcome of the trial. If she's convicted, does it say anything? I mean, do you then believe she did something wrong? Or do we come back and say, well, clearly the fix is in, or you can't trust a Mesa County jury, or the Republican DA is really a lefty? I don't know what the answer is here, but it seems to me that we get stuck with a narrative of any outcome we don't like is because of corruption and a broken system, and any outcome we agree with, well, that's just the way things were supposed to be. Our number 303-696-1971. That's some of what's going on today, as well as the polling that has Nikki Haley within single digits, and I mean 7 points, if you believe it, of Donald Trump out there in New Hampshire. Is it possible? Is it possible that Nikki Haley could upset Donald Trump in this primary process? What would it take to upset Donald Trump? I'm telling you right now, based on what I see, no, I don't see it. Here's the narrative that'll come out of Iowa. DJT is going to win. He's going to win Iowa by a bunch, double digits, probably 20 points or so. But what is going to be sold is he underperformed. If he doesn't exceed 50%, then people are going to try to start the narrative of this is a sign of weakness. This is a sign that more than 50% of the Republican electorate out there may not want him as their choice. They all went for other people, DeSantis, Ramaswamy, Haley, Christie, whatever. Then if he limps into New Hampshire and wins, and he'll win New Hampshire, but he only wins by single digits over Haley, the narrative is going to be, see, he's weakened. He can be taken. I don't believe any of it. I don't believe for a single moment that this is going to derail him from getting the nomination. But would it change your mind about supporting Haley? Would it change your mind about supporting DeSantis? And by the way, I think DeSantis is likely on life support if he doesn't come in at a strong number 2 in Iowa. I think that campaign is on death watch as it circles the drain. Because if you're a funder, where do you win? Dude's polling below Ramaswamy in New Hampshire. Where's your next win? Florida can't come soon enough. I mean, you're talking Super Tuesday stuff, too late. It's too late. South Carolina, where does he go to get his win? If it's not Iowa, if it's not a strong second in Iowa, I think Ron DeSantis may be gone. But what do I know? I'm just the radio guy out here in Denver telling you about Mitch Floria and the art of granite. Because Mitch Floria is a wizard. Nobody's going to defeat Mitch. Now, he's not going to be in Iowa or New Hampshire or South Carolina because his home is right here in the metro area, helping you love your house even more by giving it that facelift, if you will. That new countertop in your bathroom, your kitchen, your laundry room, your basement that you're finishing. This guy does it with all the God-made and man-made stuff. The granite, of course, which is baked into the name of the website, theartofgranite.com. Marble, but also the quartz. And that's what I have in my house. I have quartz countertops. I wish that it had been something that I could have pulled out of the earth or someone could have. But one, the cost would have been crazy. And two, nobody could. It's just too big of a counter. It would be multiple pieces. Well, you know who's figured that out? Mitch Floria. They can take that man-made stuff, even the God-made stuff, put it together with such seamless perfection, you would think it was a single piece of countertop. That's not me saying it. That's friends of mine who've had it done. They're like, it's impossible to believe this is 3 pieces of granite that this guy put together, and it looks like just seamlessly one piece. He also loves 710 listeners. Guy gives you wholesale prices just for being you. But if you're a 710 listener and you tell him that, and a George listener, you get the bathroom countertop for free with the kitchen countertop package. Or if you're just doing the one room, you get the sink for free with the countertop package. All you have to do is check them out at theartofgranite.com or call them at 303-386-5919. 303-386-5919. Listen, getting back to these texts here, folks still, and I think in some of this, it's because Billy's keeping this thing going with folks. Would Russia quit selling Ukrainian grain if they win? Is there any place in Europe that you would not think is strategically important? As for troop loss, I don't know. I didn't know we were at war with Russia. Face it, neither of us is going to concede. The other is right. Oh, this is the back and forth. My God, Billy, you've been busy today on the text, man. You've had it going on.
Yeah, we've had another conversation, and it goes back to the idea of Ukraine and Russia. And I'm fascinated by the party of Reagan wanting to acquiesce to Putin, former head of the KGB.
Never heard of him.
I'm fascinated by the party that just 2 decades ago was talking about how we had to defend and cultivate the democracies around the world. And now they're like, nah, let's give it back to Putin. I'm fascinated about that, especially given the breakup of how the money is being spent and the degradation of the Russian military. This is a fascinating conversation for me because I can't believe that I'm talking to people that say they're in the party of Reagan that are like, just get Putin Ukraine. What's the big deal? What could happen? Because the one thing that we know over time is that Putin is absolutely trustworthy and honest. That has been proven, correct? That he's not aggressive. He doesn't that. No, that's exactly.
He's a lover.
It.
He's just trying to protect Russia, Billy.
Exactly. He just talked about that he was just trying to reclaim natural Russian lands. Huh. Yeah. I remember there a guy that said that at one point, but it's a little fuzzy. He was
Adolf something.
Yeah, he was surrounded by a bunch of torches and had a German name. I don't remember. But
Adolf something. Also, I seem to recall too Mexico wanting to reclaim a portion of the United States based on its cultural similarities maybe even fealty for some folks to Mexico. We resisted that as well. I don't know. It's different. Let's get to the phone. It's 303-696-1971. Don from Colorado Springs, you're on 710, man. We've missed you.
Yeah, I missed you too. Hey, here's the thing. I mean, I probably agree with some of the callers earlier about the Ukraine is try to help them, but, not to get too involved so that we have another world war, but I'll leave it at that for the time being. I do want to get to the Iowa caucus.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason why Donald Trump still continues to lead is because pretty much of middle America really connects with him, or at least he speaks on behalf of them. He's their voice. I mean, they're tired of the progressives talking down to them and, telling them how to act and live. And then when Trump came around, he's saying all this stuff in spite of working in New York and all that, Hey, I mean, you know what? You can be wrong about these things, and you know what? And all these politicians.
Well, Don, we're going to do this often, but we're early here. You watch this stuff pretty closely. You've been around a bit.
Yes.
What's your prediction for Iowa, and what impact does New Hampshire have on any of this stuff?
Well, New Hampshire is kind of like where Colorado is, more or less, except they got their act together. And I think Iowa's going to go with Trump, and tell DeSantis, wait your turn. And Rhode Island being more of a kind of a center-right libertine kind of state, Trump will pull through, but not as much as he would in Iowa and everywhere else.
Well, what's your sense of if DeSantis doesn't come? How well does DeSantis have to do in Iowa, number-wise, for him to not be done?
It would have to be a lot. I mean, for him to drop out, after Iowa and not after Rhode Island. I think Rhode Island is more likely where
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire.
Yeah,
New Hampshire. I think he's more likely to drop out than Iowa, in my honest opinion. But we'll see how this plays out.
He's going to come in fourth behind Ramaswamy in New Hampshire. He has spent very little time there. Everything has been Iowa. I think they're resigned to the fact that they have to take second. But honestly, if he doesn't come in a strong second, I mean, my God, if Haley nips him, it's probably over.
If Haley nips him in Iowa, then DeSantis will bow out, focus on Florida, and wait his turn.
One other question, because this thing continues to surface here and there. I hear it on some other shows. I see it on social media. I don't know if it's a Democrat wish list or something we worry about, but that Biden somehow isn't going to be the Democrat nominee. Do you feel like that's legit, or is that just wishful thinking?
It is legit, but knowing Biden, he'll stick it out until, honestly, they can't handle him, or the other case scenario is he buys the farm.
Oh,
but I think more likely it's the problem with people that want power is they hang on to it until their dying day. I mean, Castro held on to Cuba as long as he could, and he had his brother to do it while he could manipulate behind the scenes and stuff like that. It's that with people who are authoritarians.
Yeah,
they want to be like God.
Do you see that from both Biden and Trump, or just Biden?
I don't know about Trump. Trump, he could be, but I think Trump is more about his ego and above anything. Biden, he was always a grifter, a con artist. He did what he took to get power.
A plagiarist, by the way. He was a plagiarist too, if you recall.
Oh, yeah. I call him a grifter too. So,
I think it was. I want to say it was 87 when he.
It was around that time. And the media didn't want him. They wanted somebody else.
Yeah, that's right.
And they were able to move on, and Dukakis was their guy. So Biden had to wait his turn once again.
Don, thanks for the phone call, man. Don't be such a stranger, man. Love having you on. Don's line is open at 303-696-1971. Got to cut away for a break. We'll get to your calls as well. What do you make of all this polling stuff? It's a week away, the Iowa caucus. It's the first big thing. RCP, that's Real Clear Politics. You got to go check it out because they are pretty straightforward, man. Just that, not a lot of spin. They just give you the RCP average. And in New Hampshire, that RCP average has DJT at a plus 18.7 on average. But I'm telling you, these last couple of polls, I mean, here's one that polled over 1.4 to 1.8. Trump 39, Haley 32, Christie 12, DeSantis 5, Ramaswamy 8. I mean, there's another guy that seems like he's surging a little bit as Ramaswamy in the at the fringe level. I don't know. 303-696-1971. Let me tell you about another way that you can improve 2024 for you. If you're looking in the mirror and you bemoan the fact that your hair is thinning or it's retreating from your scalp, our friend, Dr. Tanya Pauls, she's figured it out, folks. She's got advanced hair restoration. You can find them at advancedhair.com. Check out what they have to offer. I don't know how many places like this exist, but none of them give the guaranteed results that Dr. Tanya Pauls does. I can't tell you how many people that you probably don't even know in your life have had this treatment, and it has changed the way they see themselves, and it changed the way they feel. It's changed the way they conduct themselves, their level of conduct, their level of confidence. And she makes it easy too, because it's 1 day treatment. The next day, your hair, and it's your hair that they use, starts growing. Beautiful. $250 off if you call today, and 250 free hair grafts today. Give them a call, 720-459-HAIR. That's 720-459-HAIR. It's advanced hair restoration. When we come back, your calls, more of your texts. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Going to get to the text that we have. Phone line open at 303-696-1971. Gay Ribble is a superstar at the real estate game, but she doesn't do it alone. She has a whole team of people. They're called the Empower Home Team at Keller Williams. You can give them a call at 833-301-SOLD. Here's why you would do that, and I'll say the number a couple more times. I'm continuing to get more and more notifications of housing coming back onto the market, I think in anticipation of the reduction in the interest rates, the mortgage rates, and the feeding frenzy that's about to take place. There's a right timing to this. You don't have to guess or figure it out on your own because Gay Ribble and the Empower Home Team know. Call them at 833-301-SOLD. To get smarter, though, before the call, check out their website. Go to sellwithcertaintycolorado.com. That's what the website provides. Certainty. Check it out. They give you a lot of free, great information because they want you to be a better consumer and a better client. Then reach out and call them at 833-301-SOLD. That's Gay Ribble and the Empower Home Team. There's some texts that have coming in here. I do want to shift gears to one other thing, and I meant to talk about this yesterday, but the Dave Williams thing just kind of caught fire, and everybody wanted to chat about that. There's a guy who is the Secretary of Defense. His name is Lloyd Austin, former Army guy. So, of course, I have a lot of respect for him just off of that aspect of it. If you have not followed this story, a guy went into the hospital, like incapacitated into the hospital, and told apparently no one, maybe his family, but didn't tell the Biden administration and doesn't appear to have told the Pentagon. And we know that because his deputy, Kathleen Hicks, let us know yesterday that she had sort of taken over responsibilities without knowing she was taking over for a guy who was in the hospital. Why? Because when it happened, she was on vacation in Puerto Rico. And so the guy who is the head of the Pentagon, the guy who's the head of all of our branches, during a time, by the way, when we're on edge, right? I mean, point to a place on the map where there isn't something going on involving the military. We're constantly vigilant about Taiwan and Chinese threatened encroachments there. There's always North Korea. There's Ukraine, which we've talked about here, and Billy's been texting back and forth with dozens of people this morning. And then we've got Israel and Hamas. We've got a big chunk of the Navy invested in trying to maintain that current conflict at its current level so that it doesn't expand into Lebanon and Syria and get Iran more involved in all that other stuff. So the military's engaged. We are engaged. And the guy who's the civilian head of it, and this is not a knock on his intelligence or his career. I mean, guy served in uniform for a jillion years, rose to the highest levels. It's a question of the judgment in not telling someone. When you're the president of the United States and you have a secretary of defense who does not tell you that they are incapacitated or out of the loop or in the hospital and they're delegating their duties to their deputy, it's not that you couldn't delegate them, but you don't tell them. What the hell's going on? Who's running the show out there? This is as much a comment on the president as it is on the Department of Defense. So the bigger question is this: what should happen? What should happen here? I think if President Biden weren't in a re-election year, if he wasn't already on the ropes in terms of the polls and some of the pushback he's getting from the lefties over his support, all tepid as it's becoming with Israel and all this, I think Lloyd Austin probably quietly resigns and moves on for health reasons. That's what I think happens. But they can't do it now. They can't let him get Claudine Gade, which, by the way, was legit because she was a plagiarist. But you have an African-American Secretary of Defense at a time that we are engaged in multiple places across the planet who has now withheld critical information about his own ability to conduct his job from the commander-in-chief. What do you do with that? I mean, listen, if you run a business, you're the CEO, and one of your right-hand people, one of your executive vice presidents of some critical part of your operation just Didi Miles out of there for a week or 5 days. I don't care if it's a vacation or a health crisis, and you're not told about it. And by the way, neither is the person beneath them. What do you do? What should happen? It seems to me that there has to be a change in leadership. When the Pentagon releases its current statement, and they released one, of course, on January the 8th, that's yesterday, from Major General Pat Ryder. And so that you know, Major General is 2 stars, and it's a weird little thing in rank where when you're a lieutenant, you're a lower rank than a major, but when you're a lieutenant general, you're higher rank than a major general. Okay, Major General 2 stars, Lieutenant General 3. That's how it works. This is a 2-star. Press Secretary for the Pentagon, Major General Pat Ryder. This is yesterday. Secretary Austin still hospitalized at Walter Reed, but he's in good conditions. He's recovering well and in good spirits. He had been in the intensive care unit. What? It says, this is a quote from the thing, since resuming his duties on Friday evening, Secretary Austin has received operational updates and has provided necessary guidance. He remains in contact with his senior staff. He has full access to required secure communications capabilities. We're talking SCIF level stuff there, and continues to monitor DOD's day-to-day operations worldwide. Well, what about before that? What about before that? I mean, it sounds like his own deputy, this Hicks, she didn't even know he was in the hospital when she was running the show while on vacation in Puerto Rico. I mean, thank God nothing happened, but is this okay? Is this normal? Does this happen all the time and we just happen to find out about it? 303-696-1971. Lewis, you're on 710 KNUS. Lewis from Aurora, what are you thinking, my man?
Brother, are we surprised that something like this happens with this administration? So incompetent, and you got people like Mallorca saying, "Oh, the border is secure. It's secure," and you got the vice president saying the border is secure. All nations need to, control their borders, and here we are, borders all open. And are we really surprised that something like this has taken place with this administration? And Biden, who can't even.
I think Lloyd Austin's a legit Secretary of Defense. He's got the chops. He's got the career in the Army. I mean, the guy has led troops. I mean, he knows better than this. I don't think this is a Biden thing. I think this is a General Austin thing.
Well, hold on. Who was Secretary of Defense with this issue with Afghanistan and pulling out? Who was Secretary of Defense at the time?
No, I can't remember.
Huh?
I can't remember. Could have been Lloyd Austin.
With the pull out of, it was Austin. And Milley, also the Joint Chief of Staff. Come on. You can't be surprised that something like this had taken place.
This is a weird one, though. This is a weird one. This is
the whole administration is weird.
It's weird in that he knows better, and it would have cost him nothing. Like, what I kind of want to ask the question: why not tell someone above you? Why not send? And so here's the possibility, Lewis. It could be guy thought his people had taken care of it. Like, we haven't heard that yet, and I think we would have. But I'd love to hear someone say, "No, I talked to Kamala." Or I talked to the chief of staff, or I talked to Anthony Blinken, or I talked to anybody and let them know I was going in for this procedure. But nobody has said that.
Right. Because no one said. He didn't tell anybody except, I guess, maybe his wife or his kid. Yeah, I got to go in for a procedure. I'm going to leave the nation.
Intensive care unit. Intensive care unit.
And what if something would have happened? Wouldn't he have to tell Biden, listen, this is an option for a retaliation or for whatever? And he left it to the assistant who was in Puerto Rico? Come on. This is the whole administration, George. It's a failure.
The hospitalization began on January 1st to begin 2024. I realize there's some privacy issues here, but I think at this point we should get to know what was the procedure, what was done. It sounded like it was elective surgery, but I don't know that that's true. But if it is, what was he doing?
Well, and the thing is, after the procedure, then he had to go to ICU. So apparently it was something
Post
more serious.
surgery. I can see being in ICU just post surgery, depending upon what it is. I mean, unless you're having a mole removed or something like that, if it's invasive at all, I can see spending some time in the ICU. Here's what it says. This is another thing. Austin, quote, underwent an elective medical procedure on December the 22nd and went home the next day, but returned after experiencing severe pain.
Yeah.
What the hell is going on?
You tell me.
It says, this is the Major General, the spokesperson for the Pentagon, said in his Sunday statement that Austin's chief of staff notifications, quote, was unable to make notifications before January the 4th due to illness. What? What are you talking about?
I know. But again, George, the China balloon, I was stationed at the Warren with missiles and that, the China balloon, all this stuff. It's the entire administration. They all got to go.
Well, I think they might be going. Here's a quote from this same article from General Austin, and I appreciate him owning the responsibility for this. That's just what you expect from a military leader. But he said the media concerns about, he said he understands the media concerns about transparency, and I recognize I could have done a better job ensuring the public was appropriately informed. I commit to doing better, but this is important to say. This was my medical procedure, and I take full responsibility for my decisions about disclosure. Okay. But then what do you do? Do you wink, wink, nudge, nudge that? Do you say, hey, I'm glad you learned a valuable lesson, Mr. Retired 4-star general, career military guy, and let's not let it happen again? Or is this one of those things where you go, you got to move on? I can't have you in my administration if that's the kind of judgment that you exercise. It's too much of a black eye for me.
Well, that's definitely has to take place because he's not one of members of the Joint Chief. He's the Secretary of Defense. He's above them all. He's got to go. But I don't know who you're going to put in his place.
It's not a comment on the man or the career. It's the judgment. It's that decision. And he says, I take full responsibility. Okay, what does that look like? And I think the short answer, and I led with this, Lewis, is if this weren't a presidential reelection year, I think he's gone. Quietly, he moves on. Maybe he still will, but I think Biden's like, dang, I can't be firing the Secretary of Defense, especially when we're engaged in the Middle East and we're engaged in Ukraine in some way. I mean, that would be devastating. That's my guess is what's going on here. That's what will save him.
Well, Biden has no clue what's going on anyway. So maybe Austin said, this guy doesn't know what's going on. That's okay.
Maybe he told, Lewis, good point. Thanks for the phone call. Maybe he told him. Maybe he told Biden and Biden just forgot. I don't think that's, by the way, how the flow of communication takes place. I think Lloyd Austin has a decorated and well-deserved accolades for his career in the military. This judgment just doesn't make any sense to me. But you know what does make sense to me? When you go check out our friends at Twin Aspen Dental Center for any of your dental issues. Now, Dr. Julia, she does all the big time surgery stuff that you and I hope to never, ever need. But everything else below that level, it's Dr. Richters and Snyder at Twin Aspen Dental. They do the regular routine cleanings. That's what I go see them for, just the maintenance. They do some of the gum stuff and the dental implant stuff and the bridges and the crowns and all that other stuff that you would want out of a dentist. But they do it in a way that you just feel like at ease. They have a high level of expertise. They have all of the state-of-the-art equipment. I know because they subjected me to it the last time I was there, some sort of a panorama thing that you have to bite down on this thing. It's awkward, and it spins around your head and shoots radiation into your brain. No, it just takes an x-ray to see your teeth. And then they tell you, hey, everything looks good so far. Strong teeth. Keep flossing. Please keep flossing. I've heard that now for decades. These folks become like your neighborhood dentist. Get away from the big box store thing. Take a knee from your current dental situation. And I'm telling you, you're going to fall in love with these folks the way I did. Check them out at twinaspendentalcenter.com, twinaspendentalcenter.com. Make that appointment today at 303-841-7466, 303-841-7466. That's Twin Aspen Dental. Hey, when we come back, we'll finish up with your calls, your text, George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here for my own little raspberry beret right here on 710 KNUS. Hey, listen, last thing I want to tell you about before we get into the final texts, and they're kind of a little all over, because I think we have been to a little bit this show, trying to stand on a bunch of different positions and get input on them. And of course, we had Richard Holtorf on, and that was a great interview. I want to tell you about our good friends at Ultra Botanica. These are the good folks who have figured out a way to patent this curcumin-based all-natural supplement that they put in a for free 3-day supply for free at your natural grocers. If you go there and check them out, here's what you get: antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, all positive health things. Billy and I have done it. I took it for, the initial batch, it has to be close to 20, 30 days, something like that. And the things that I noticed, I've talked about before, the swelling in my ankles and my Achilles area where I had an injury after I run, it's still there, but it goes away so much more quickly. I just feel better having taken it. That all you have to do is go check them out. You can check them out at getultranow.com. Do the research online, figure out the curcumin thing. Don't even take their word for it. Just look for it online and see all the great health benefits there are to it. Then get in your car, drive over to the natural grocers, ask the vitamin manager, because you can't get it any other way. I'd like my 3-day supply for free to try it out. And you can get a 3 days free supply for a friend or a loved one too. And then bing, bang, boom, it's all done. And you're on the path towards better health. Here's some right here. Actually, I don't think Russia's communist these days, regardless of your view on just how megalomaniacal, geez Louise, Putin is, or how corrupt Russia is. Jacqueline here. George, who police are politicians? Who police is the police? We have no accountability for anything. God, I wish I could get to all these things, but we're running out of time. Listen, we'll be back tomorrow, 6 to 10 a.m. It's you, me, the BTs. Stick around, by the way, for all the national guys, but make sure you come back here for the local stuff. We love it, and we do it better than everybody else. It's George Brauchler on The George Show, 710 KNUS.